Aloha and welcome to the 6th meeting of the Community Representation Initiative for the Red Hill. We're going to begin first with an oli.
This oli was written by Kumukawai Kapu o Kalani, and it is to help us to center on the vai and why we are here today, which is to protect our precious vai. Ola I ka vai, ola I ka Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Ola I ka vai, ola I ka Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Ola I ka vai, ola I ka Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii.
Mahalo. So we'll begin first with some introductions and then we'll get into the meat of the meeting. My name is Marty Townsend. I'm the chair for the CRI. I grew up on Central Oahu and I now live in Kalihi with my family. And we'll just take it down all of the CRI members who are here in person and then the members who are on Zoom. And then we'll go around to the other members at the meeting. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Lacey Quintero. I am the co-chair of the CRI. I am representing the impacted community.
Aloha, I am Heleni Sonora Pale. I live on Oahu. I was born and raised here. I'm Kanaka Maoli, and I represent the Kanaka Maoli community. Mahalo.
Hi, aloha. My name is Melody Aduha. I am also born and raised here. I live in Kahalu'u, and I am co-chair of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party, and I am a CRI representative for organizations. Aloha.
Hello, my name is Walter Trun. I was born and raised here in Oahu as well. I'm a CRI representative for the public.
Susan Gorman Chang. I'm a CRI representative for the public, and I live in Eva Beach.
Okay, we'll go to Mandy on Zoom.
Aloha, everyone. Calling in from Virginia at 11 p.m. here, and I represent impacted families. It's good to be here with you this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. Ilima?
I tapo at Kalamai for this sound in the background. I'm commuting somewhere. I'm Ilima Katapka. My hometown is Kaneohe, Ko'olaupoko, and I'm here representing members of the community on Oahu. Mahalo.
Thank you. David?
Aloha, I'm David Hinkin. I'm an attorney with Earth Justice. I live in Makiki, and I'm participating this evening on behalf of the Sierra Club. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Miller, and I apologize for my voice. And I'm going to try to speak up as much as I can here. I'm the director of the Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division at EPA Region 9. And today, I just wanted to give a few opening remarks. I know that there's been a few press releases that have come out, and I wanted to center us on what the CRI is about. As many of you know, EPA, Navy, and DLA added the CRI to the 2023 consent order in response to comments seeking more public participation in the Navy's obligations under the proposed order. EPA stands behind this decision. EPA appreciates the CRI and the role as liaisons to the community here in Oahu. The 2023 consent order states that the purpose of the CRI meetings is to facilitate early discussion and continued flow of information among community members, the Navy, EPA, and other stakeholders in relation to defueling, closure, drinking water actions taken by the Navy and Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. Over the months since the CRI has been established, it has shared vital information with EPA, such as resident complaints about drinking water, which enabled EPA to better direct its oversight efforts. As results, we recently finalized our second drinking water complaint investigation. Both investigations were initiated as a direct consequences of concerns raised in these meetings, and EPA appreciates that. Further, we recognize the challenge that the Navy and CRI have had in coming to terms on expectations for these monthly CRI meetings. It is EPA's continued goal to have the two parties continue to come together to engage in civil dialogue and collaborate in a safe, professional, and productive environment. EPA expects the Navy to continue to participate in the CRI meetings as is required under the 2023 consent order. EPA affirms the CRI's role as the host of these meetings. However, we also recognize that the Navy is limited in what they are able or required to share in this forum under the terms of the order. It is imperative that the CRI and Navy establish a mutually agreed upon set of ground rules and guidelines for conducting these meetings so that they can continue to be productive. To this end, EPA has secured and invited both the CRI and the Navy to enter into mediation using an EPA-arranged mediator. Last month, EPA invited the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service to participate in the February CRI meeting. They spoke with several members of the CRI and the Navy to start to build an understanding and history of the challenges at hand. Created in 1947, Federal Mediation Conciliation Service has a long history of providing conflict resolution services to industry, government, agencies, and communities. As highly trained, neutral facilitators and mediators, Federal Mediation Conciliation Service strives to understand the needs of all stakeholders and utilizes best practices to assist the parties in achieving the best outcomes possible. EPA expects both parties to join EPA and engage with the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service and participate in the process and find some common ground to advance the next CRI meeting. EPA is committed to doing all it can do to establish a level of trust between the Navy and the community so that we may work together to achieve the mandate of protecting human health and the environment. The public has made a difference for the good of Red Hill, and we expect it will continue to do so. EPA views CRI's role as crucial, and we need your help in ensuring the CRI can fulfill its responsibilities to the community. We also need the Navy's cooperation. EPA's hope is that a mediator can navigate an acceptable way forward. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. I apologize for my voice.
Good day, my name is Corinne Lai. Good day, my name is Corinne Lai, and I'm with the EPA office out of San Francisco, and I manage the drinking water program there.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Cito. I'm the Environmental Management Division Administrator for the Department of Health.
Aloha, my name is Kathy Ho. I am the Deputy Director for Environmental Health with the Department of Health.
Good evening. My name is Steve Barnett. I'm the Commander of Navy Closure Task Force and also the Commander of Navy Region Hawaii.
Good evening. I'm Mark Williams. I'm the Deputy Commander for the Navy Closure Task Force.
Good evening. I'm Captain James Sullivan. I'm the Commanding Officer of Naval Facilities Engineering System Command, Hawaii.
Good evening. My name is Justin Kahanui. I am a Army reservist as well as I'm a public affairs for the Navy. And I'm also a cultural specialist. I am half Hawaiian, and I bring the cultural understanding from my kupuna and focusing on the kupuna and the root culture that runs the islands.
I also have several colleagues here with me. Grace Simmons, who is with the HERE office, a part of the Department of Health. And online, we have Dennis Lopez, who is from the Safe Drinking Water branch.
And I should mention, we also have some EPA staff. Christian, our drinking water inspector, along with Allison Fong, who focuses on remediation at Red Hill.
Ma'am, I believe DLA is also on. Dave Kless, I believe, is calling in.
Thank you. All right, a few housekeeping matters. First, I just want to say that public testimony will be held at 7 p.m. Regardless of where we are in our agenda, I will do my best to wrap us up so that people can testify then. If you're testifying, if you're here in person, just line up at the mic and we'll just take it one by one. And if you, we'll do 3 people in person and then 3 people online to testify online. Please use the Q&A function in the Zoom land. You can either just write your question and someone here can read it for you, or you can request to be able to speak and share your question that way. There is a very strict, I'm going to be very strict about 3 minutes for public testimony. And I will do my best to enforce that. I have a timer and I have a gavel. And I just want to highlight that we really appreciate public engagement. Like it has been, this task is already overwhelming, and having so many people from the public available and interested in helping us has really made a big difference. And I wanted to highlight ways in which people can get in contact with us. Rosalie, if you could put up this slide about how to contact the CRI. So we have a new email address, redhillcri@gmail.com, very official. We also have a website, an Instagram account, and yeah, those are ways in which you can get a hold of us if you need to. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight people read the paper today, hopefully. You should read the paper. And the Star Advertiser had 2 op-eds from directly affected families. And I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. And if you're interested in getting more involved in other things that affect Red Hill, House Bill 2690 is working its way through legislative session right now and needs another hearing. And you can call local lawmakers to express your support for that bill, assuming you read it and support it. And yeah, so you can see here the ways in which to contact the CRI. Okay, so now that we are through introductions and we're going to get into the beginning, the meat of the business. So let's start with water contamination topics. We have a series of questions around water contamination. We want to do a lot of follow-up on the FTAC meeting. And so I'll just begin with we're surprised to hear at the FTAC meeting that the theory of choice right now is that the reason why water is that people are getting sick from the water is because the lab actually is not doing it correctly. There's something wrong with the lab samples. So 8,000 samples have been taken, and the theory is that all of them are showing total petroleum hydrocarbons because there is some sort of cross-contamination at the lab. And I would like to ask the EPA and Department of Health if you all agree with that conclusion.
Thank you, Marty. With regards to the information that was presented at the FTAC, we have been working with the Navy to evaluate the data sets that we have access to. We still await data packages from the Navy to support their conclusions, but based on some limited data sets that we've looked at independently. Some of the lab, what we consider artifacts, which is what the term of choice is being used, does seem to correlate. But again, until we get additional information and continue to do kind of our own investigatory efforts to look at more data sets, we still, at this point in time, still await evidence to support the Navy's conclusions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The Department of Health agrees with the EPA's analysis, and we do believe that the hypothesis needs to be validated. Joanna or Dennis, do you have any further comments? Oh, Dennis says he's locked out of Zoom.
Oh,
I'm in.
He's not a panelist. The wizards on Zoom will help to fix that. Thank you very much for saying something. Go ahead.
Okay, while we're waiting for Dennis, I was at the FTAC meeting. I think everyone could tell I was visibly upset by what was presented. And as somebody who was personally impacted, the whole purpose of all of these meetings is to find out what's happening, why are people still sick, and to hear a presentation that came to the conclusion that it was lab gloves just doesn't make sense to me. Even if you were to go down that route, it doesn't explain why people are getting sick. If there was a lab error, that wouldn't cause all these people to get sick. And I think it's a little suspicious that they were all 8,000 lab errors when the last time we had detections was Biz 2, and those were also claimed to be lab errors. So to me, it just seems like one step forward, 1,000 steps backwards, and I'm not sure why we're investing so much time investigating the labs when we should be finding the cause. Why are people getting sick? And every time there's a positive detection, it's a lab error. It just doesn't sit right. It doesn't make sense. And I don't understand why we're going down that route. Can anyone explain to me?
Yes, and before I hand it off to the team here, what I wanted to just stress to you is that we're looking at everything. Okay, we're continuing to look to see why the family members are still presenting as ill during certain cases. So we're working with the doctors on that. That's why it's important, and I'm appreciative of when I get information that families are sick and things like that, that we can dig deeper into that, go and check the premise, go and check the house, check the water, but also make sure that they are getting the health care that they need so we can follow up with the medical doctors. I will tell you, and I'll let the experts here jump in on that. We're looking at all 13 root cause analysis, all the 13 roots. That's what we're working with the EPA and the DOH. Understand that they need more data, and that's what we're doing. We are, in addition to doing the normal LTM testing process, we're also doing the new process so we can compare the data, so we can make sure that we are looking at everything. Make no mistake about it. I'm looking to find out why the families are still presenting as ill. And, sometimes it's what you know, sometimes it's just what you don't know. So we're going through, we're looking, and we are doing our best to find this out. James, you want to talk a little bit more about the testing?
Yes, when it comes to the 8,000 samples, it is not 8,000 lab errors. It is the sample and the laboratory method that is utilized. It's not a drinking water method. As we all know, there should not be fuel in drinking water, so therefore there was not a method developed for that specifically. So the method that is utilized is not a method that is typically utilized with drinking water, which is chlorinated. So it's not lab errors. The lab is doing, and the method is doing exactly what it's supposed to, but it is those low-level detections that are consistent among all of those 8,000 samples that don't seem to show any fuel related. It is still coming across as TPH. So it is a chemical reaction that is occurring in the lab as part of the lab process. So it's not a lab error. It's part of the intended method, but since it's chlorinated water, it is causing these peaks to show up, and those peaks are due to a reaction in the lab and not due to the water itself. So that's that's what the method and the hypothesis and all of the discussion is all centered around. How do you prove that all of those peaks that you're seeing are, in fact, reactions that are occurring in the lab? Again, not lab errors. It's just that this method is not and was not designed for drinking water. So
I just want to point out that people were not designed to drink jet fuel. And it seems like we should have thought about this years ago, so I don't know why we're just now thinking about it right now. We know chlorine is in drinking water, so this isn't a surprise that we just figured out after we took these 8,000 samples.
That this was the best method that is available. I wish there was a method also, but this is the best method that has been identified, and that's why it was agreed upon at the beginning of the crisis when all of the drinking waters got together as part of the IDWST, looking at all possible, and I wasn't here at that time, someone could jump in if they were, but they looked at all possible methods, and this was the leading best method. But at that time, it was known that there was always going to be what was referred to as noise or low-level detections that were at that 50 to 80, that small range, but it was the best that was available.
So are you consulting with any scientists or experts that can tell you what happens when fuel mixes with chlorine, what chemical that forms, and are you looking for that?
As part of the swarm, we brought together, for those, I know many of you were at the FTAC as well as last month when we talked at the CRI. We talked a lot about the swarm, where we brought together all of the drinking water experts from the Navy, from the Department of Health, the EPA. We brought in medical professionals, brought all of that group together to look at all possible causes and to really take a step back. And that's what that team did. And I know Chris Waldron went through a lot of this at the FTAC. I can understand that it could be frustrating, but we absolutely have to present the science and the data that we have.
I'm glad you brought up Chris Waldron. Could we explain what was meant by entire neighborhoods not being impacted by Red Hill? What did he mean by that?
I don't recall.
He said it was impossible for entire neighborhoods to have been impacted by Red Hill, and he named Fort Island, Pearl City, McGrew, Camp Smith, and a host of other neighborhoods.
I believe you're referring to the hydraulic model that was done of the drinking water, the distribution system that was part of the ACO. The ACO required this model to be completed. That model was completed back in 2022 by engineers in compliance with the ACO. It was submitted back in, I believe, June or July of 23, and then it was approved in about December of 23. So I believe that's what you're referring to, is the hydraulic model that looked at the time of the fuel releases, where the water would have been coming from, the three different shafts that we had at that time, the Waiava shaft, the Navy Aiea shaft, and the Red Hill shaft, and what water would have been coming from each and what the hydraulic properties of the distribution system would have been. So that was a complete study and a model that was done in accordance with the ACO. I believe that's what you're referring to, or he was referring to.
I don't know what he was referring to. I just trying to figure out what he meant by it was impossible that entire neighborhoods were not impacted. It's just a lie, and I just don't know why he would even mention that.
Page 25.
Okay, Heilani and then Susan. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So I just have, I think, to address some of what you just said about you have to present your evidence. When you see a headline that says that there were false positives, right, with the water testing, what that does is it gives people a false sense of security when it comes to their water.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to follow up with Admiral Barnett from the last meeting. Were you able to inform new residents that have just arrived, that are in Navy housing, that about the Red Hill situation? You had stated that you were in the process of getting something together.
Yes, ma'am. And what I'll tell you is that when an individual comes to the housing office, and I double-check this, they are introduced to the issues that have been into the past, to what has happened at Red Hill. And we have two different housing units. One is an Air Force housing unit, the other is a Navy-ran housing unit ran by partners. And the Navy side does a lease addendum, and I saw that where they can sign it and they talk about it there. And the Air Force side has a flyer that goes out for that also. We've in the process of, and we should be complete, I believe, with the actual updating those documents, but I can make sure that we can get you a copy of it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten anything from you since, and that was a month ago. So would like to see what you're giving. We'll be having a water drop soon, so I'm hoping that the families will be saying that, yes, I know about the Red Hill situation. Thank you for this clean water. And I'll be a little bit more cautious. Again, it's about informing families so that they can make the best decisions on behalf of their own families.
Yes, ma'am, and I'll make sure that you have access to the flyers and everything else that we can give the families.
Okay, thank you. I have some questions. Admiral Barnett, was the entire swarm team in agreement with Chris's conclusions?
I would have to.
Yeah, I mean, that was the conclusion of the swarm team. It was a consensus of that entire group. Now, throughout just as a group
so
like
the
this.
EPA just said they hadn't analyzed the data.
The swarm team.
Are you not part of the swarm team?
We are not part of the swarm.
There's no EPA representative on the swarm team, is that correct?
I think it was a Navy-led swarm team, but there were representatives from the EPA and DOH as part of it.
Okay, but do you see what I'm saying? It sounds like when you represent, that's the conclusion of the swarm team, it sounds like the EPA, as a member of that swarm team, is in agreement with that conclusion.
They had representatives
Do you see how confusing that would be?
With the conclusion that the most likely hypothesis, what we believe is happening, what we are gathering all of the evidence to continue to try to prove that hypothesis. My understanding was all members that were part of that discussion agreed that that was the most likely hypothesis, and that was what we were going forward with.
Kareem,
so
would you
if
agree
this
with
is
that?
different.
So, Susan, I would say that the hypothesis was put on the table, and EPA is looking to ensure that we've got the evidence and the data to support that. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay. My next question is, Chris really focused in on the 50 to 80, right? There's plenty over 80. There's plenty over 100.
Just to clarify, that's 50 to 80 parts per billion of TPH in the water.
Yes, thank you. What about those above that? There's plenty above that. Are those also suspect?
With the 50 to 80 that I believe you was talking about, you're talking about the difference. Let me find the slide specifically where it was discussed. That is the difference between the minimum reporting level as well as the method detection limit. So yes, he did focus on those 50 to 80, and yes, there are some that are above 80, but
There's many.
Many, I agree. Many that are above 80. All of those are still part of the discussion and what the analysis that's going on right now to look at the difference between quenched samples and non-quenched and that laboratory reaction that's occurring. That doesn't just affect the 80 and below. It affects every single sample. So we're well aware there are many that are over the 80 parts per billion, and all of that is part of the discussion and part of the analysis.
And did you ask the lab? I mean, the lab, I would think, would be very good at adjusting or figuring out what sorts of chemical reactions would be happening. Why do you have to take the lab numbers and then give them to Chris? It would seem to me it would be better for the lab to do that analysis.
The chemists that are working with the lab were all part of those discussions. So Chris was the representative or the person that spoke on behalf of all of those SMEs who were part of that discussion. They did include lab technicians. They included the contractors that are doing this work. So it was much more than just Chris.
Okay, so do you have a list of labs that you use that you can provide us?
We
did
can
these
provide a list
samples?
of the labs, and including it is. I'll have to verify exactly where, but on the Safe Waters website, it includes the lab reports from like SGI is one of the primary labs that we utilize, Eurofins. We can provide the labs that we're sending our samples to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mandy and then Walter. Wait, hang on, Mandy. We can't hear you in the studio. 1 second. You're unmuted. You're fine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. I have a couple of questions. First question is Chris Waldron paid by the Navy?
Is Chris Waldron paid by the Navy?
Chris Waldron is on contract to the Navy.
Paid by the
and Marine
Navy?
Corps Public Health.
Yes.
Paid by the Navy. Okay. A couple of things. I know we don't agree on much, but I'd like to go through a list of things I think we can agree on, and please stop me if I'm wrong. Can we all agree that in 2021, thousands of gallons of fuel from the Red Hill Bulk Storage Facility leaked, and it compromised the aquifer, which then compromised the drinking water system, the Navy's drinking water system that serves approximately 93,000 people? Anyone disagree at this point? Okay, from there, we also can agree that the Navy failed to warn its 93,000 drinking water users, and in fact didn't tell anyone about this spill until thousands of people ended up in the hospital. And so because they ended up in the hospital, we would assume that they were sick then, correct? When people go to the hospital, they are then sick. We can all agree that the fuel that compromised the drinking water system made these people sick. They were sick then. Would you all agree that people are still sick today? Amy, you all just did two, investigations. One we just got today. Would your investigator, like when he talked to the folks who've been on this drinking water system, did he conclude that people are still sick?
He only took down what people said. He took down what people said. He's not a doctor. He cannot make medical diagnosis.
But he did account for people were sick then, and the people are still sick today. He did write that down. I understand that he's not a doctor, correct?
He wrote down what they said and made observations about the drinking water in their home.
Okay, but the discussion did talk about people still being sick today after drinking water that has sheen on it and stuff like that, correct? That was part of the investigation.
People who spoke to our inspector said that they continue to be sick. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So we've got the EPA that has asked people that, and but we also have Dr. O. So Dr. O works for the Navy, or he works for DHA, and he's been kind of in charge of this whole thing. And he just sent out a newsletter to all of our physicians, even my doctors here in Virginia have gotten it. And he talks about how he explains to doctors, and he says, hey, this is what happened in 2021. Everything that I just said was put in this newsletter. Dr. O, he is a doctor. Not only did he say what happened in 2021, but just last month, he talks about how people are still getting sick. He lists the symptoms. He talks about how it's in their medical records. He's doing this to inform the doctors because he talks about how folks are sick and the frustration that military families specifically are feeling when they're going to their healthcare providers. And I can attest to that being out here in Virginia at Walter Reed, one of the largest military hospitals, that our doctors don't know about Red Hill, but we're all still sick. I'd like to ask, how many civilian doctors are being consulted there on Hawaii about this? Because we're kind of talking about this as if we're just starting from ground zero. We know folks got sick back then. We know folks are still sick right now. But what we don't understand and can't begin to understand is, why aren't we talking about health? The fact that these people are still getting sick. Can we agree? I mean, are we not, why aren't we talking about the fact that people are still getting sick? Is your assumption that this is all in people's heads? Did Chris, when he went out, did he believe that this was all in people's heads? That it was some sort of psychosomatic thing? That these children, I had children ages 1 and 3 years old, right, who ended up in the hospital. And we, like Lacey, lived on Ford Island. But now we've got you guys on this side of the table saying that Ford Island wasn't even impacted. And I'm telling you that my 1 and my 3-year-old ended up in the hospital just like Lacey Quintero's kids did, who were also on Ford Island. So when we're sitting here talking about all of these things and all of these, we've heard this. We've heard everything from, oh, it's probably from gassing up your lawnmower. Oh, it could be from just pumping your gas at the gas station. Do you think my 1 and 3-year-old are pumping up gas at a gas station or filling up a lawnmower? Can you, any of you gentlemen, do you think my 1 and my 3-year-old are pumping up gas or filling up a lawnmower? Because
Major
that
Fine, I
is
do
the
not
information
think
that
that.
you're putting out to brand new families who are coming to Hawaii today. You're not talking about the fact that there was a massive jet fuel spill and that there's TPH still in the water. You're trying to convince these families that they can have TPH or hydrocarbon products in their system from fueling up gas tanks and putting and gassing up their lawnmowers. Please make that make sense to a mother of a 1 and 3-year-old.
You have any? Do you want to respond? Yep.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mandy. Walter?
Hold on, I just want to be very clear that no one,
Here, wait,
not a
Walter.
single
Mandy's
person
still
from the
talking. Hang
Navy is interested in discussing that.
I'm sorry, Mandy. Can you say it again?
I didn't get a response, and maybe there's a delay, but we're here to talk about the community's concerns, and the community's concerns are their health. So I'm asking you, why is it that you are putting out in your pamphlets that this stuff could be in these people's system or in your drinking water system, gassing up lawnmowers and putting fuel in their fuel tank? How do you explain that for children? Are you saying that that applies to children?
Major Fine, you would have to talk to the health professionals about that. With the
Where's your
ACO,
health
we're here to
professional
talk about
tonight,
defueling,
sir?
closure,
Because
and
it's a
drinking
community
water.
concern. Do we not have representatives from the Department of Health there?
We do, but
Okay. So the Navy believes that my children or any other child out there may be having this stuff in their system, or it might be in their water system from gassing up fuel from their car, or putting gasoline in a lawnmower. So if the Navy's not willing to address that because that's what they're putting on their information to families that are coming into Hawaii, then I'm asking, does the EPA or the Department of Health believe that children have this stuff in their system because they genuinely believe that children are gassing up lawnmowers or gassing up a car?
Mandy, I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, what material, but we take all complaints very seriously, and we have been investigating them because we want to make sure that the drinking water system doesn't have contamination in it. And that's why we do these investigations, because we need to determine. We continue to have concerns beyond the samples that have been taken. Why are there sheens? Why was there an uptick in lab results? And so by us following up with complaints, it's helpful for us in understanding what's going on with the system.
Amy, in response to your investigation, the Navy did provide a pamphlet. Nui provided that to the CRI. He's sitting right there at the end of the table. I hope that someone is able from the CRI, since I'm not there, to show Amy what that looks like. And I'm appalled that you haven't seen it. But it is circled in a big fat circle as to how TPH potentially is getting in these people's system. And I would like for you to take a look at that, because the bottom line is people were sick then and people are sick now. And again, I'm opening the floor to we don't agree on much, but can we agree that people were sick then and people are still sick now?
yeah. Okay, we'll facilitate getting that packet of information to the EPA and Department of Health so that we can nail that down. Okay, we're going to move to Walter now.
Good evening, Admiral. I have a couple of questions. At the FTAC, Chris Waldron made a presentation. Prior to that presentation, he was on Hawaii News Now, I believe, and he basically informed this reporter that there were false positives from the laboratory procedures and the analysis, and basically the water was safe. I mean, to quote him, he said the water was safe and protective. At the FTAC, he also talked about, he referred to the swarm a number of times. As of today, we don't know who was on the swarm. We actually don't know who this group is. We have no identification. We have no credentials. We don't know what their backgrounds are. We don't know any of that stuff. And then recently, the preliminary report I guess the premises plumbing report got posted, and it's called a preliminary report. And so when we go through this report, it's pretty much the same stuff Chris Waldron had presented. And as I understand, EPA hasn't reviewed it completely. I didn't see a peer review. Nobody signed this report. You just got this thing out in the open. Public statements are made, and as Heolani mentioned, the impression to the public is everything is okay. We found this problem with the laboratory procedures, and as Captain Sullivan just mentioned, that it's not necessarily the procedure itself, more than it's the type of method that is being used. That is not being told to the public. The first time I heard that is tonight. So when one of our biggest problems is when you present information and you guys give us information, it's missing the quality, the quantity, the integrity, the objectivity. We're missing all of that. Now, I didn't make those words up. Those words come from your SECNAV instruction regarding information you give to the public. At the very minimum, we beg you, if you're going to provide us information, follow your own rules. Give us stuff that has integrity, that has reviews, peer reviews if necessary. Sign the damn report. Tell us who came up with all of this. Chris's presentation at FTAC was clearly one-sided and very biased. And so we object to it. We object to the report. I wish that you would get on your website and either pull that preliminary report out or let the people know that this is just very preliminary. You guys have no background. There's no evidence or anything to support most of that stuff, other than a bunch of chromatograms, which we have other experts that have looked at it and are questioning what are we really looking at in those chromatograms. So unless you have peer review, other kinds of credentials, people looking at it, please withdraw that report. It's creating a very false impression, definitely a false security in the public. What mentioned, and I guess Mandy as well, and Heolani mentioned, and Lacey, regardless of all of this, people are still getting sick. And there's two big issues, and we keep harping on the same two issues. People are getting sick, and they're not being given alternate water supplies. If you come up and you give a family 10 gallons of water, that's not going to last that long. How much water are they supposed to have? They should have an alternate water supply, and one that's clean. If we can't provide that, then I don't. And my question to EPA and the Department of Health is, why aren't you pushing them to do that until they figure out what's causing the illnesses? Do something. Giving 10 gallons of water or 24 gallons of water to a family of 5 is outrageous. I don't know what they can even do with that. Part of Mandy's questions and concerns deals with the ISP. So we have this.
Wait, Walter,
ISP.
what does ISP stand for? What does ISP stand for?
I actually forgot. It's an incident-specific parameter.
Good job,
Ask me
guys.
a hard question. Okay, so the 266 parts per billion was based on a calculated risk level. We know that, we understand it. It came up at the early part of this whole incident. But if I took this calculated risk level that we know 2 years later, 8,000 samples later, I'm looking at health effects. So this risk level, this risk-based level says people shouldn't be getting sick. And the risk is maybe 1 in a million. And I think the EPA range is between 1 in 10,000 up to 1 in 1 million, right? So within that range, maybe 1 or 2 people might get sick. We get over 100 people out of 93,000. The risk or our experience is no longer a risk. Our human experience with people getting sick is 1 in 1,000. You're way outside of your range of acceptable risks. So with that in mind, will you guys change that ISP? Will you change the parameters that the Navy is clinging to make them look at getting clean water for our families? And above all, we need to do something about the people who are getting sick. They need clean water. It's a basic human need.
Hi, Walter. Thanks for that question. The ISP was a screening number, and it was created at the time of the response, early on, in the early days of the response. That ISP number is, at the end of March, will be going away with the long-term monitoring plan. The Navy is going into their, I forgot the acronym.
Extended monitoring.
Extended drinking water monitoring plan, which will, maybe they would be better to explain it, but my understanding is whenever there is a detection of TPH, there's a multi-pronged approach on how they would be investigating it.
As a similar concept to LTM. So at the end of LTM, it talks about if there's exceedances, what action. For the extended drinking water monitoring plan, that is the plan that the Navy has committed to that is going to follow at the conclusion of the long-term monitoring in March of 2024. So starting in April, the Navy has committed that we will enter the EDWM, Extended Drinking Water Monitoring, which is a 1 year, at least 1 year. At the end of that 1 year, it'll be condition-based to determine if it needs to continue past that. But the focus is not on an ISP. The focus is on all of the analytes that would make up any type of fuel that would be in the water. So we will still be testing for TPH, but we're going to be testing for all of the components that would be found and would make up jet fuel, as well as any of the other normal water compliance. Just a couple of notes on your other, not necessarily questions, but requests. For example, on the premise plumbing, the preliminary premise plumbing. We are committed to full transparency of everything. And so by pulling that back, I know we've been requested to put information like that out there, realizing that it did not yield a clear conclusion like we would have hoped. And that's why, as Admiral Gray talked about last time he was here and Admiral Barnett has continued to talk about, we're continuing to focus on changing what was more of a response team to an overall water quality action team, where that's where we went out and we took the water heater apart. We tested that. We're looking at the different components of the water heater to continue to improve upon and to try to get a more final premise plumbing assessment that we could put back out. And we will do as soon as we've got all of the information. When you talk about peer review, I agree 100% that all of our documents need to make sure that they're right. We do not have the luxury to have mistakes in any reports or put out information that is not corrected. And for the swarm products that they put together, the EDWS that we're working on right now, that is the plan, we have not put those out. We've talked about kind of the fundamentals of what make them, but we're still working those with the regulators to make sure that we have it right before that goes out. And it is a back and forth, very iterative process that, again, we've got to get it right. So I agree 100%. Peer review, making sure it's accurate, getting as much information out there as possible, but we're committed to make sure we're transparency. So some of those reports on there may not have a conclusion that is clear or what we would have hoped it would be or what we thought it might be, but we still want to get that information out there. All of the information that we have, we want to make sure is available.
But you create a false sense of security by issuing it, by getting out in the public and telling everybody the water is safe based on your laboratory errors and stuff. So I'm not questioning you on that.
Safe drinking water standards.
Yeah, my point to you is, if you tell us stuff, tell us the truth, give us information that is solid.
We are committed to the truth.
From day one, and I will tell you honestly, from day one when you started defueling, every time we asked for you to give us the backup information for the things you say, we've gotten nothing. So you're providing us information, which is a lot better than it was before, but the information you're getting it's not valid. You can't substantiate any of the information you've given us with a report that's not signed by a bunch of sworn people. We don't know who they are. And again, you need to give us just the basic level of integrity. And I'm not challenging your integrity. I'm just saying what you gave us gives us nothing to work with, and it gives us suspicion and more questions than it's helpful. So, and again, aside from all of that, the people out there don't give a crap about this stuff. They're getting sick and they don't have clean water. That's the main issue. You know, you can explain all this stuff, it doesn't help them. And this is our concern, and over again, we keep repeating this. And you know, one of the things Amy had said, and I wanted to agree with her, we're here to help you help yourself. But you give us wrong information, we can't relate to anybody information that is suspicious or questionable. So and keep in mind that the people that are calling in, they didn't call you guys. They didn't call EPA. They didn't call DOH. They called members of the CRI. So we're relaying information to you. We're trying to help you, again, like I said, help yourselves. Challenging us, giving us wrong information or questionable information is not helpful, and it's not helpful to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Understand. And understand our relationship here and how we can have back and forth to actually show data and talk. So you have our commitment that we will be working with you on this, okay?
Thank you.
Walter, I appreciate kind of your making us self-aware, kind of what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and that's part of why we're here, is to be able to have a conversation and hear about what you're seeing and what you're hearing from the public. As we continue our path with the Navy on extended drinking water monitoring, I'll take it even one step further from what Captain Sullivan indicated. We are moving away from a number for TPH. We're actually pushing forward to try and identify the actual makeup of what's actually in the TPH mixture that we're seeing, so that we can actually identify and speciate exactly what that compound is and potentially look at toxic literature. So we're, behind the scenes, we're actually digging deeper than where we have been, and we have a framework in place. I think there are various things that the Navy is doing that looks holistically, including premise plumbing, and that's just one piece of the bigger picture to try and rule out and eliminate things as we're trying to go through it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think I'm optimistic that we continue to work towards data transparency and looking at the data where we've got different subject matter expert eyes. And when you talk about who's on the swarm, at EPA, we've got our headquarters folks that I lean on very much so for their expertise in drinking water contamination incidences. We've reached out to ATSDR. We're going to look to them to help us on looking at toxics literature as we go down that path of identifying what's in the makeup of the TPH detects. And as we're all looking at the chromatograms as well. So, I mean, I think peeling back layers is what we're invested in right now that maybe we hadn't been before. So there's a lot of effort going in it, but I appreciate, Walter, kind of your comments, and it's important for us to hear all of that.
I appreciate that, Corinne, but I'm just, my bottom line always is going to be a 5-year-old who gets in the bathtub and is throwing up an hour or two after their bath. I don't care about all this other stuff. I don't care if your procedure is wrong or if it's flawed. It's what are you doing to get them clean water? Whether it's TPH or if it's something else, if it's a bacteria, whatever it is, it needs to be cleaned up, and these people need to have clean water. I just don't know how we keep missing that point. We get tied up in all the technicalities and all these numbers, but we miss the point of, and that's Mandy's point, I believe, that just, what are you doing to help them?
Walter, can I say something? I appreciate your, it's a long term. I'm sure it's a lot. I know that the TPH is not really, it's probably evolved into something else. I'm not a chemist, but I wanted to just say that in the meantime, it's like you're not giving families clean water, but then also you're not giving them a choice because you're not giving them the information. You're not saying, well, maybe you shouldn't be drinking the water, right? And so I think that's where, as a Kanaka Maoli, as a mother, that really hits me hard because residents are not being given a choice because they're not being given the information and they're not being told, hey, hold off on, and maybe that water isn't safe. We're doing the research here, which is great, mahalo. But in the meantime, this is what may happen to your families. And that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to represent the community, and that's what they're saying.
Can I wanted to clarify something. Justin provided us with the information, your notification package. So they did give us, it's a 4-page package, but exactly what Hilani said is what's missing.
Okay.
When I reviewed it, we just got it, I think, this week, so we need to send it to you. But it's got a lot of pictures and a lot of history and everything, but you don't give them that choice.
Okay.
And you don't give them a clear understanding of what the risks are to their health and to their children's health.
Okay. We'll take another look at that.
Okay, we've got we got Mandy on Zoom, and then and I guess then we'll take Alima after that, and then Susan will come back to you. Sorry, thanks. Go ahead, Mandy.
Thanks,
Speak
Marty.
loud.
Can you hear me?
Try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. To Walter and Hailani's point, and to caveat or ask a follow-up question to Corinne. It's been 2.5 years. Not 2.5 months, it's been 2.5 years of families reporting how sick they are. And I appreciate, to Captain Sullivan's point, that you guys are being thorough and that we're working it out and we're getting all these swarm teams and we're calling it whatever we are this month or last month. But the bottom line is, it has been 2.5 years that these families continue to get sick. So may I ask, why is there not a drinking water advisory put out? Kathy, I met with you last month. I flew out to Hawaii on my own dime and I sat in your office and I asked you then, where's the drinking water advisory? EPA, you have done 2 drinking water investigations over the past 6 to 7 months. You have heard multiple residents tell you, you've met with them, you've met with their children. Where is your drinking water advisory? If you all don't know what it is or haven't figured it out, you have an obligation to warn these families. Where is the drinking water advisory? You know people are getting sick. They continue to get sick. People are sick today just like they were when we were sick 2.5 years ago. Brand new people. Brand new people are moving in and they're getting sick just like we were 2.5 years ago. People have not stopped getting sick. And I don't care if it's 266 above or less. The bottom line is there is a sheen on these people's water and they are getting sick. And the people, the federal agencies that are responsible to protect human health are not advising these people that there is something wrong with the water, whether you figured it out or not. So I ask again, where is the drinking water advisory?
Okay, hang on, Mandy. Let's give him a chance to answer. It's my understanding that from the Navy protocol, when the contaminant in a water is unknown, that the procedure is to put out a water advisory and advise people not to drink it because the contaminant is unknown. Because we're in this situation where we thought it was TPH, but now we're seeing that it's not TPH because the kind of sampling, kind of testing that the lab did brought back perhaps a false TPH. That means that, and also we know that people are having symptoms. So we know there's something in the water. It's just not what we thought it was. Shouldn't it lead you to then say, hey, everybody, don't drink the water for a while?
That's when we will work with the regulators to make that determination.
Okay.
But also, I think I would urge the Navy, if the families want alternative water, they should be able to get that alternative water.
Adequate amount.
Thank you, Kathy.
Or not. I mean, you know, I know you provide alternative water to the families who have a complaint, but you should consider perhaps providing alternative water if the families would like it.
Kathy, I agree with that.
agree.
And thank
I think
you.
making a-
But where
making a
is your
statement that-
drinking water advisory? You've escaped the question.
I couldn't hear. Did you?
She wants to know why.
Oh, Kathy.
An official water advisory.
Hang on.
Why has one not been put out? You've received the complaints directly. The EPA and the Department of Health have received the complaints. You've read them, you've met with those people. Where is the drinking water advisory?
Mandy.
We get that the Navy we've been asking the Navy to provide clean water. It hasn't happened. That's what Hey Alani and all these nonprofit organizations have been doing, water drives on the weekends. We've all been donating to it on the states. That we already know that should be happening. But because it's not, I'm asking you, as the regulators, where is the drinking water advisory to protect human health right now until you all figured out what the heck's going on with that drinking water system?
So,
please answer the question.
Wait, Mandy, let's give Amy a chance to answer.
Mandy, so in order for us to issue an advisory, we have to have noncompliance with an MCL or a maximum contaminant level or some other source that poses an imminent threat. We have to be able to identify it. You know, we do take the complaints very seriously. We are working as hard as we can. We do not know what the answer is. We still have a lot of outstanding questions. Why are people seeing sheens? Why did we see an uptick in total petroleum hydrocarbon sample results during one of the periods? We asked the Navy to do a root cause analysis to continue to figure it out. We have also asked that they provide alternative water when people are concerned about their water.
Amy, you didn't answer my question, and the Department of Health still hasn't answered the question. The bottom line is people are still getting sick. You all know about it.
Yeah.
You all know that people, that innocent children, that civilians are getting sick. They don't have access to clean water. Our president says everyone in America should have access to clean water. The people in that drinking water system do not. You all are federal and state regulators. Where is the advisory? These people do not have access to clean water. They don't. They're sick. They've been sick for 2.5 years. Kathleen, will you please? I mean, the Department of Health put out an advisory 2 years ago, and then you lifted it, but you know that people were still getting sick. So you have the opportunity to put out an advisory now. I want to know why you won't.
So Mandy, I think they've answered the question. The Navy is punting to the regulators, so they're not following their own protocols. And then the regulators are waiting for there to be an MCL that's violated. Yeah. So we're in that situation.
Finger, but the bottom line is,
yeah, we hear you.
People are sick.
Yeah, we hear you. Thank you. Okay, all right. We're going to have to move on because we're already at an hour. Okay, so we've got Susan and then Melody.
Yeah, hopefully this will be quick. I'm still trying to understand the swarm team. So, Corrine, you said you were moving away from a number, and yet the swarm team came out analyzing numbers and coming to a conclusion. So I don't understand how, you know, you're all sitting around the table and nobody brings that up. Like, oh, we're going to move away from a number of parts per million or whatever.
So I think those are two different matters, Susan.
Okay.
We are moving away from the 266. That is going away, as Kathy indicated. And the approach we're using on the extended drinking water monitoring after the end of this month is to continue to do deeper resolution and identify and speciate compounds for anything over the detection limit. So we're acting on, or the Navy will be acting on anything above the MDL. So, you know, we're in the past, it was this 266. Now they're going to take action on anything above 50.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
If
very
that
much.
helps. Okay.
Thank you. All right, we'll do Melody, and then, I'm sorry, Lima, that I skipped over you earlier. We'll come back to you after Melody. No, go ahead. It's easier for a little.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'm looking at Department of the Navy, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. And this manual, it's entitled Manual of Naval Preventive Medicine, Chapter 5, Water Quality for Shore Installations. Specifically, Chapter 5, Water Quality for Shore Installations, it says, is the contaminant known? Question mark. The answer is no, from what I gather. The question's no, we don't know what this contaminant is. So in your own manual, it is saying that you are to issue a, quote, do not use, quote, notice. And it also says, consider alternate water supply for consumption, firefighting, and sanitation. So it is in your rules that you're supposed to supply alternate water when you don't know what the contaminant is. So that's all we are requesting initially, that you follow your own rules. And this one is NAVMED P-5010-5, revised July 2019. Thank you.
Okay.
No, one more.
Noted. They're writing it down. That's good. Okay. Elima, are you ready? Take a second to allow your sound to come through.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Mahalo. I really appreciate everyone's mana'o on this issue. And I wanted to kako'o to what has been already said about people not being given a choice, not being given enough information. And so I understand that there is obviously a tension between the public's right to know, especially those who are on that water system, and the military's need to maintain a certain amount of order. But I do think that we need to take a look at not just the ingestion of the water, but they're based on some prior research and information that Walter had shared with us earlier. There are 3 routes of entry to the body system, and that would be inhalation, ingestion, and absorption. So while we're talking about providing individuals with another source of water, I'm also wondering if maybe we should look at the premises where they're living currently. And the reason why I say this is because we don't know if ingestion is the only way that people are becoming sick, because we don't even know what it is that they're becoming sick from. So rather than continue to force these families to live in these residences where many or some of them may not have even realized that they were coming into such a situation, I have asked the military, and I've also indicated to Amy previously that I think it's a good idea for the DOD to relocate anyone who is on the water line that wants to relocate. In fact, I actually implored them to not even give people a choice. And the reason why I think people should not be given a choice about that is because as long as the government allows people to live in these residences, just like Maui, it exposes everybody, including the taxpayers of Hawaii and the taxpayers of the United States, to incredible liability when we finally do find out whatever it is, okay? So if you want to mitigate the exposure, mitigate the risk, and mitigate the liability, which is a kala, it's about money, then I strongly urge that you not just supply them with a different water source. I strongly urge that you consider the recommendation that I made last year, I think in October, at one of our earliest meetings, to relocate these individuals. And I've spoken with several family members, some who have already relocated, like Lacey, who can afford to, but others who can't afford to, or for some, whatever reasons, they're inhibited. And they've indicated that they're willing to make the move. I'm curious if the government would be willing to provide the public, specifically those individuals who are living on that water supply, with information about inventory that's available at other military installations or other sites that the military does have housing. It seems to me that with so many military members being allowed to live off post these days, which was not the case when I was a young military spouse, there are probably a lot of open units. And why not relocate these individuals to those open units? And if there is a reason why the military can't relocate those people to those open units, maybe we need to find out what's wrong with those open units. Because I had a child who was stationed once on Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station back in 2010, 11. And at that time, she was told not to drink their drinking water. And I'm thinking that it has something to do with jet fuel too, perhaps, because they were located just next to the airfield. So, first think about relocating these individuals, not giving them that choice, because I think it's unreasonable to continue to expose people and then think that they shouldn't come back with some sort of requests for remedies later on. And also, if there aren't any units, or if you don't have sufficient units to relocate these individuals, or if the units that you have right now are vacant for a specific reason, I think we all need to know that, because I think we all need to know the full extent of the contamination of all of our water systems across all of our islands. I can't speak for people outside of Hawaii, but I can say for people in Hawaii, we sure do value our vai. I mean, it's so important that it's not just the name of our water, but it is when you double it, when you refer to vai, it talks about abundance or wealth. So Kanaka Maoli wouldn't have used that terminology if they didn't think vai was so important. They wouldn't have used so many different, I mean, I have a book of different names for ua. We wouldn't have so many different names if it wasn't such an important element of our culture. So please, consider not just the alternate water source, but relocating these individuals, recognizing, that we've allowed them to stay in these units far too long, and move on at least from that topic so that these people can heal, or at least start the healing process. Because I don't think that they're going to be able to heal emotionally, spiritually, or physically as long as they're forced to live in those units and paid to be sickened. So mahalo for allowing me to share my mana'o.
Thank you. Do you have any response?
No, thank you, ma'am. You bring up some good points there, and I'm definitely going to look into that, in the relocation of the alternative water sources. So thank you for that.
Just a few wrap-up questions. What are the next steps for the swarm investigation?
So right now, the swarm, the framework for the extended drinking water monitoring plan, we're still working with the regulators to finalize exactly what that looks like. But we're not waiting. We already have our contract in place. Well, it's not in place yet, but it will be prior to the end of end of March, so that it begins immediately in April. We can modify that if required, if there's something that changes in the framework that we're working with the regulators right now. And then as Corinne mentioned, there were two separate tasks from the swarm. One of them was the EDWS, which is the follow-on to LTM. The other was the root cause analysis, where we continue to gather all of the facts and the information, discussing the reactions, the laboratory, to make sure that we've got all that together into a comprehensive report that is peer-reviewed, discussed. So those are the two products that we are continuing to work right now. Anything
would it be possible to have the swarm team, someone from the swarm team here for the next CRI meeting on April 18th, just to talk about the progress so far?
We can look into that.
Okay, thank you. Has a petroleum engineer been added to the Navy Closure Task Force?
Go ahead, you got it.
Good. Okay. So,
Yes, we have access to petroleum engineer on the swarm team, not on the closure task force, but as part of the swarm team.
Okay, and I guess I don't understand the functional difference between having them on the Navy, the Closure Task Force versus the swarm team.
I'm sorry, we can utilize, we can pull that person. Right now, the focus for the petroleum engineer is actually at, for the swarm team, for looking at the tech memos and the things like that. But we can pull that person over as required as part of the Navy Closure Task Force, as we're doing the closure, going through the closure, the decommissioning, and the remediation as required.
Is this someone that can be available for this type of meeting?
I would have to look into it.
Okay, thank you. Please do. All right, and then we wanted to talk about the premise plumbing report. I guess, can you talk a little bit about the premise plumbing report? It was inconclusive, basically.
Correct. The initial premise plumbing report, that occurred, as of following the October CRI, all of the discussions, well before the swarm was established. That report, it looked at multiple water heaters. It conducted the samples of the hot water. It looked for bacterial growth, biological growth, water heater temperatures, really any cause that could be causing people to get sick. And it unfortunately did not identify anything different. And that's why one of the reasons, again, that the swarm was put together and the follow-on premise plumbing, the taking a water heater completely apart. We selected a water heater that I believe it was the second highest TPH reading that we had. We selected that because it was a high pass TPH, and so that is the follow-on efforts that still continue to this day. We don't have the final results of all of that analysis. The TPH, the LTM samples that were taken, those all came back. There were some detections, but low level. There was nothing out of the ordinary of what we've seen in the rest of the system, but we're still working on that. But the big focus and what we've shifted to over the last few months is going away from when we would do the rapid response. So we still, to this day, if anyone has any water quality concerns, they can call the EOC. We will send a team out. They will do the sampling. But in the past, we really were focused on JP5. Let's do the TPH test. Let's verify it's not, and weren't as focused on let's look at everything. So the focus has changed. It's now, we call it the Water Quality Action Team, and it's in inspectors that are not just doing all of the water sampling. They're looking for biological, bacterial, hot water heater temperatures, any films in the water, anything that looks unusual, feels unusual, smells unusual, anything. And that's the focus for anybody who calls in right now with any complaint.
Okay, and so will you be doing additional premise analysis, like another water heater, other piping?
It depends on what comes back from this one.
Okay, when is that expected?
I don't have a date. It's still in the works, but obviously it's one of those that, we can't put information out until we've peer reviewed it, made sure we agree it. We'll go over it with the regulators. So I don't have a date for when that would be coming out.
All right.
Marty, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the premises plumbing, on your analysis and the things you guys are doing, have you guys done any vapor monitoring from the shower heads, from the hot water that's coming out of the shower heads, or anything that sprays the water or that could possibly release any vapor from the liquids? Have you done any of those kinds of vapor monitoring for an exposure determinations?
I'll have to go back and verify what all was included, but not that comes to the top of my head when it comes to vapor within.
Will you bring that back to your investigators and your swarm team? Okay. The vapor monitoring is extensive, but we've not seen any results or any attempts to do that kind of monitoring.
Okay. As part of the premise plumbing within the house.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give Mandy the last word on this topic so we can move to air quality. Okay? All right, go ahead, Mandy. I think, is she frozen? Mandy, would you like to ask a question? You have your hand up. No?
Can you hear me?
Okay, all right. So we can move to air quality then. All right. So, we have been concerned about the air quality monitors that have been put up throughout our community. We would like a map showing the location of all the air quality monitors. Do you have that?
We do. There was a map was sent out with the original letter from the installation commanding officer that showed all of the different 42 locations throughout the. I thought it was on the website, but I was not able to verify that. I have a paper copy of it now, but we'll make sure that we get that.
We'll make sure it's out.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can hand you the paper copy of it now. If
yeah. Okay, that's
Captain,
great.
it was on the website, but it got taken down. It's not there.
Yeah, and because I believe I remembered seeing it on the website, but when I went to validate this afternoon, I could not find
it's not
this
on there
map on the
anymore.
So we'll
website.
make sure it's back on there.
It'll get back up there.
All right, thank you. So we would like that map. What data has been collected so far?
So all of the data from the air quality monitoring is included. It's on the website. We also, I know I'm sure you've already looked at the website. You've seen the fact sheets that are there. It talks about all of the data that's collected. So everything is on the Safe Waters website.
So I submitted 14 questions regarding ventilation for the tank cleaning, and part of those questions involved air quality monitoring inside the tunnel, exposure monitoring for the workers, but most importantly, the air quality monitoring outside of the tunnel in and around the neighborhoods. So your air quality stations that you guys set up, none of them are in residential areas or in any of the neighborhoods, both on base and off base. Of particular concern are the residential areas off base. Once you start dumping air out of the tanks and you're ventilating into the public, we want to be able to make sure that we have some kind of monitoring and notification procedure for our neighbors and friends in Alava, Salt Lake, Aliamanu, Foster Village, Moanalua. We're talking about people outside of the base now, the general public. We had asked at one of our meetings if they were required to obtain an air discharge permit, and I believe the site, the Navy website says they don't have one, or they weren't required to have one. They're not required to have one.
So, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. The Navy is not required to have a permit for degassing. However, the Department of Health on March 8th requested information from the Navy on its air monitoring plan before degassing of the tanks, the beginning of the degassing. The letter asked for locations of air monitoring and also to be able to provide the public with accessibility to the data. The Navy responded back to us on March 18th. We are in the process of reviewing that information and may seek further clarification or information if it's not complete.
Will that air quality monitoring plan be made public?
Yes,
I would
it
assume
will.
so.
It will.
Yeah, okay, so I ask that you look at my questions. We're really concerned about the discharge, not just the gassing, but we're looking at the vapor and the particulates that are discharged. Another concern is fire around the tunnel and into our neighborhoods. So whatever precautions you've taken, we're asking if you can describe them for us.
Walter, would it be valuable to take those questions in as part of the next to include as a presentation of the next session?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and just as a follow-up, did you finish the plan for the cleaning of the tanks yet, or is it out?
Well, we're still working. Go ahead.
So the tank cleaning, the tank cleaning plan, I guess the question, let me just clarify. Are you talking about the actual?
Yeah, with the simple green and all of that.
Correct. So we briefed that. We talked about that at the FTAC on how we will go about cleaning the tanks. And I don't have the presentation in front of me, but we'll be happy to bring it back and provide it.
So it is complete?
Correct. The
Okay.
plan is correct.
Okay, and also one more follow-up. So we were promised after it was mostly defueled that we would get be able to do a site visit as a CRI.
Right.
Is that
right.
possible?
A week from now, I take over. I'm definitely going to revisit that. So we're going to look at that. Okay. I know that had been under Admiral Wade's watch, so I got that for action as one of my first duties. So we'll be reaching out to coordinate.
Thank you very much.
And the other thing too is recognizing that it's really kind of an active construction site, right? As we go through the decommissioning phases, and it's going to be, it may be difficult at times to bring folks through there on tours. We are working on essentially we'll call it a Red Hill 360. Think of Zillow Home kind of tour that we can use at various open houses to allow people to kind of see into what the facility looks like.
I just want to note that I've received direct public comment and questions regarding the air comments, and it seems to be that people are really concerned about their own safety. They want to know, they look out, they see the monitoring stations, and some of them, they think that they're going to get this real-time data back and forth to notify them, and that's really not what's happening. And so they want to know. They've specifically asked me, what is the warning going to be for people? Should they remain indoors? Should they put a towel under the door, tape the windows, turn off AC? They want to know what are the possibilities here. Is there going to be some sort of alarm system to notify them? What direction are these fumes going to be blowing in? What level of danger is the community in? Those are the direct questions from multiple people that I've received.
Okay. As far as the notification process, we'll be working with HIEMA, and, you know, they have the system set up to where you can put out, based on cell phone coverage, where you're at, things like that, you get the test. We also have that's the first thing that we will use, is utilize them for that. On top of, at Red Hill, I think part of the plan, and you can talk a little bit about that, is we're going to have a weather system there where you can tell wind direction and things like that. So we will be working with HIEMA to notify the families, those who would be impacted, and it will give specific instructions on that. As we get closer to that, and when we come back to brief on the air monitoring plan, we definitely can talk to you a little bit more about that, but also open for ideas on how we can best communicate. You know, obviously, if something happened, you know, we would have a stakeholders list that we would reach out to. CRI would be a stakeholders list. Hey, there's something going on. A couple of, you know, several other organizations that we would be reaching out to, in addition to the normal notification process via, you know, on your radios. You know, you get the, this is a test on the radio, also on the TV, but also in addition to the cell phone, because that's the quickest way to get that information out.
Wait, so Mandy's been waiting, so we can take Mandy online, and then Susan, and anyone else? Okay.
Thank you.
Mandy, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Try to speak up a little louder. Good job.
Okay. A couple of follow-up questions. To Hayalani's question specifically, 2 days ago, I met with members of the SASC, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I was pretty surprised when they told me that they were actually given a tour of Red Hill and met with you, sir, and Admiral Wade. And so I'm just wondering, you know, the CRI has been asking quite some time, many times, to have a tour. And so I'd like to highlight that other folks have been given that tour, and we'd like one as well. The next thing is, sir, I know that I've asked many times, but where are we at with hazardous duty pay for our service members who are not only working at Red Hill, but also living in contaminated homes, working in contaminated environments, teaching, working in those schools? Where are we at with hazardous duty pay, sir?
Major fight where we're at was that that information was passed up through up to senior level of OSD. My understanding was that that was also a decision that the individuals that you're mentioning here was not they were not in the zone, so to speak, for the hazardous duty pay.
Okay, so who disapproved
I can find that out,
hazardous duty pay,
but
sir?
that was Major Fight. Those were OSD officials. I'll have to find out who those folks were.
OSD. So now we need to go to Congress to be able to get our service members hazardous duty pay. I mean, you all have used the word hazardous materials multiple times in your briefings. And so we're not addressing the fact that folks are still working in a hazardous environment. Got it? My last question is there any plan to put air quality monitoring in individual homes or schools or medical facilities during this portion? We've asked for it before. We know that people are sustaining coughs. I can speak for myself. My son has permanent lung damage from the inhalation in our home. And so I know that we have air quality around the base, but what about in individual homes, schools, medical facilities? Is there a plan for that?
Major Fight, that when the team comes by to do the assessment for the new ready response team, when they do show up for that assessment, that's what one of those individuals there will be able to, from an industrial hygienist point of view, be able to take a look at that.
So I'm not sure I quite understood. Maybe
There is
you
not-
didn't understand
right
my
now,
question.
there is not a
Is there a
plan.
plan to put air quality monitors in people's homes?
Right now, Major Fight, there is not a plan to put individual monitors in homes.
What about in schools where our innocent children are going to school, the CDCs?
Major Fight, I'm not aware of any plans for those. I can look into that, but right now, I'm not aware of any
Medical
plans.
facilities where there are immunocompromised individuals or sick folks?
I would have to check with the DHA or
Okay.
the medical individual.
The last question I have is, why do we still have a Red Hill clinic?
Major Fight, that clinic is there for folks that present with illnesses. They can come and we can get them the help that they need.
Illnesses related to Red Hill, sir? Why is it called the Red Hill Clinic?
Is to identify.
There's tons of medical facilities, around that area. But why is this one specifically called the Red Hill Clinic, sir?
Major Fight, I would like to think that that's to provide folks that the information that is specifically for them, that folks that have Red Hill concerns.
Okay, so we still have a Red Hill Clinic because folks are still concerned that they're getting sick because of the water that they're being served that was contaminated by Red Hill. Thank you, sir. That's all. Thanks, Marty.
Okay, all right, Susan and then Mandy.
Yeah,
Sorry, then Lacey, sorry.
Yeah, so I appreciate Lacey's question, but also at the FTech meeting, I brought up asking if we could have a real-time app connected to air monitors. I know that's technologically possible. I've had that myself. So that way people could look and know ahead of time and be empowered to make a decision like, hey, I want to get my family out of here, I want to get this school out of here, and not have to wait for you to go through all of your steps of, telling people that they need to evacuate. I just think that would be more empowering than waiting for you all.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
were going to look into that. Have you looked into that? You
Correct.
told me at
Yes.
FDEC.
So that's to that end. That's our desire. It's going to take a little bit of time because there's some software development that has to occur, right, to do that connection. And then the other thing you need to do is, or we need to do with the regulators, is establish what are those action levels, because there are no VOC limits for outdoor air quality. There's no established by the regulators of, hey, here's the appropriate environmental action limit. So we've got to establish at what point do we need, people may see, hey, why does it go to 2.3 parts per million? Is that bad? The answer is, for a contained workspace, for example, it's 15 parts per million over 10 hours, right? So 2.3 in a blip is not bad. But we've got to, what we want to avoid is sort of putting something out there and have folks not clearly understand, hey, what does this mean?
Right. Isn't there a background level, though? Isn't that what you're
Correct. So the baseline data that we've been collecting has established that.
So you have a baseline,
Correct.
right? So if something's above that baseline, I would think that might be questionable.
Correct. It
So
needs
you have a
investigation, but
baseline.
what does it cause? Is it a truck driving by? Is it a gas powered mower that has gone by in the vicinity? There's a number of things that can cause temporary blips and temporary measures of VOCs.
As I understand it, the right air quality monitor could identify the difference between a gas power motor and something that could be coming out of Red Hill as vapors.
Correct. But you'd have to, when you start talking about monitoring at a total VOC limit, which is what you're looking at, you're not going to see that at face value. It's kind of like the chromatograms on the water, right? You've got to dive in and see, okay, what is it? What are we looking at?
Okay, thank you.
But what you're saying is it is possible for there to be a live app that people
That's what
could-
we're working towards. Now, whether it's truly real time or if there's like a 15-minute or 60-minute time lag delay, right? Is data's got to be collected and then it's got to be consumed in, sent to a server, uploaded, and so forth. So we're trying to figure that out. And work
Usually
with
it's
the
5
software
minutes.
piece, so.
Usually it's within 5 minutes. That's been my experience. Thank you.
I have a quick comment to follow up on Mandy's question about the hazard duty pay. You said it was denied due to not being in the correct zone. Did you mean zone like a particular region in the world? Is that what you're talking about?
No, and I meant because of, and I don't want to, I'm not aware of the actual reason, but my understanding was that it didn't meet the requirements for whatever the definition is for hazardous duty pay.
Okay, I've read it before, and it seems to me like basically there's certain regions that qualify. And obviously this isn't one of them because we're barely even acknowledging the harm, right? So makes sense. So what I'm saying is, can we just change the instruction? Instructions are changed all the time in the Navy. We can add a location.
Right, that's my understanding, and that's not a Navy instruction, at least that was my understanding. My understanding is that it's a Department of Defense, but I could be wrong on that. But
Yeah,
that's
same
right,
difference.
right.
I mean, it
Right.
could be changed, right?
Right.
Can you commit to that or putting that up?
I will
getting that
take it
changed?
up again, yes.
Thank you.
Additional questions on air quality? Okay. Are we ready to move on then to, all right, so the next area has to do with forever chemicals. And
Marty, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Elima, sorry, you have a question. Oh, no, Mandy. Okay, I see you guys now, hang on. Let's see, let's have Mandy go first and then Elima.
Quickly, Admiral Barnett, you were not wrong. It is not a Navy instruction. It's a DoD policy. The subparagraph is called duty involving toxic fuels and propellants. It's not anything new. It doesn't need to be changed. It's already defined in the DoD regulations, sir. And I would ask again for about the 20th, 25th time that we please get this pay to our deserving service members who are being put in harm's way every single day for the past 2.5 years. Thank you.
Okay, Ilima?
Yes, that's along the lines of what I wanted to state. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Mandy. There already is a policy, and the reason why we know that is because we're dealing with a lot of claims from individuals who are now experiencing exposure to other types of toxins because they had to do those burn pits, right? So we do know that there is there's some lag time between the time of the incident and the time that people actually do have any kind of symptoms. And I ask that the leaders here on the federal side, please work very closely with whoever you need to work with at the DoD to be able to expand or somehow interpret the definition to include someplace like Hawaii. It doesn't have to be determined to be a war zone, but I think that we could definitely say that there is hazardous in that definition there that Mandy is referring to. And I think that you could find that interpretation in that definition without even getting anyone at the DoD to make any changes. I think it's quite plausible that you could do this if you wanted to. And I think that it's important you do it. And the reason why is because just like those burn pits, which so many service members are dealing with now, and there's a lot of money being spent on those service members and their families and so on and so forth, we have an opportunity to abate the exposure. We have an opportunity now to do some things, to make some corrections before more people are harmed or before more people are harmed worse. So I implore you to do what you can to find that interpretation, because I think you definitely can without adding it or necessarily changing anything. So mahalo for allowing me to share.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's spend a few minutes on the PFAS topic. So there was a letter. We saw the EPA issued a letter in response to the Navy's decision to no longer test for PFAS and PFOAs and other forever chemicals. And I was curious to hear what the Navy's response is to that Navy letter, or to that EPA letter, excuse me.
So PFAS is outside the scope of the ACO. That said, we're going to continue to do things to protect the environment, look at the site assessment, and the subject of PFAS and forever chemicals is going to be continued to be discussed at the interagency level with EPA and DOD and Department of Navy.
Okay. Do you guys want to ask any follow-up questions on PFAS? Melody, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, following up on that. So on December 7th, 2023, you informed the regulators that you plan to cease your monthly groundwater monitoring for PFAS and did not intend to monitor other locations where PFAS was found at Red Hill. Additionally, you also do not plan to start remedial investigation into this contamination until the summer of 2025. Why did you decide to cease monthly groundwater monitoring for PFAS? And what were the specific factors or considerations that led you to that decision?
So again, PFAS is outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue the discussions with EPA at the interagency level.
Okay, what other locations where PFAS was found at Red Hill? What were those other locations?
So again, PFAS is outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue those discussions with the EPA at the interagency level.
Okay, and why doesn't the Navy intend to monitor these other locations?
We will address other locations as part of an overall site assessment and site investigation on our way forward.
Okay, and what factors contribute to the delay in starting a remedial investigation until the summer of 2025?
So again, that's outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue those discussions with the EPA at the interagency level.
All right. Is there any specific timeline or plan for addressing the contamination during this period?
So again, outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue those discussions with the EPA at the interagency level.
Okay. Okay, and how might this decision, and that would be to delay the remedial investigation, how does that decision affect the safety and well-being of nearby residents and military personnel?
again, outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue those conversations with the EPA at the interagency level.
Okay, and is there a plan to communicate any response from the Navy to the affected communities?
Again, outside the scope of the ACO, and we'll continue the discussion of PFAS at the interagency level with EPA.
Okay, so I take it then you're not going to answer any of my questions?
Correct.
Yeah, that's kind of the hint there, yes. Okay, I see David has his hand up online. Just take a minute for the sound to come
Hi.
up. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little garbled, so speak slowly.
I will speak slowly.
Perfect,
How's
that sounds great.
Okay, wonderful. So Admiral Williams, I understand you've been well coached in terms of refusing to answer any of the community's questions and concerns about the Navy's threats to our water supply associated with PFAS. I'm just going to make a comment. I'm not going to ask a question because I know what your answer will be. The comment is that the Navy is trying to repair a relationship of trust with the public that you are duty sworn to protect, and that relationship has been badly eroded. It doesn't help the Navy or the public that you're duty sworn to protect for you to stonewall and say that it is not within the scope, and so therefore you're not going to talk to the public about it. That's just my comment. It's not helpful to you ultimately. I suggest you discuss that with your command and whether the Navy wants to have a change of heart and actually be transparent, which is what you repeatedly say that you want to be. Because I hope that you can understand that if you're a resident of this island and you rely on this water supply, you are concerned about all the various forms of contamination that the Navy has posed as threats to that water supply. Because unlike you, we do not rotate off of this island. We live here, and we rely on that water supply. So again, I don't expect you to respond. I expect you to say it's outside the scope, and all I can say is that's unfortunate. Mahalo.
I second his statement.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, so basically the feedback is it would probably be better if we have some kind of conversation about PFAS, recognizing that this is, not specifically called out in the AOC. It's part of the whole kit and caboodle that is the disaster at Red Hill. Okay, so let's, in the interest of time, oh, yes, Melody, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make a comment. During the FTAC meeting, it was disclosed that the DOH as well as the EPA would like to suggest testing for PFAS every other month. And then there was also a comment by Ernie Lau, Board of Water Supply, asking for testing once a month. I'd like to say, as co-chair of the Environmental Caucus, we would like to request testing continuously, continuous monitoring for PFAS, since it is highly carcinogenic, and we are seeing more and more people having cancer, and many of them are starting much younger now as well. So although it may not be a reason, or I should say it may not be the only reason, it is still a reason.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you could please do continuous monitoring on something that is known as liquid cancer. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be working with the regulators on this, particularly on a way forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes before public testimony starts. You have a question? No? Okay, all right. So we can pivot to either having Professor Havlicek speak, or we can go on to the next agenda item, which is following up on our old business. Which would you all prefer?
I actually don't think that he'll have enough time, but Admiral Williams said that at the next meeting, we're going to have the swarm guys here. And I think that would be a better time for Dr. Havlicek.
I didn't say swarm guys. I thought you wanted to talk air quality. At the
No,
next,
but he said.
Oh.
Earlier, yeah.
But we're going to look,
Sorry. You'll try to
earlier.
get- oh, got
I'm
it.
going to look at having.
Okay,
having
all
a
right. So
swarm rep here to
on the
talk.
idea that we will possibly have the swarm team or someone from the swarm team here, the April 18th meeting, we could have Professor Havlicek to
Yes.
speak then. Excellent. Okay, shall we move on then to the next agenda item?
Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
For full disclosure for you guys, the person that we've been talking to is Dr. Stephen Havlicek. He's been working with the University of Hawaii, and he's been attending their meetings discussing drinking water and stuff. He's got 50 years of experience working with laboratory procedures and different kinds of analytical methods and procedures. So he's well versed in all of this information, and he has some opinions as well. So I'll ask him to come to the next meeting when we have the sworn people here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. All right, so we're going to move on to the next agenda item following up on old business.
A question
But,
about,
yes.
I just want to, before this
Yeah.
ends, get a update on Halawa Stream dumping. Are you still dumping the same amount? Is it 5 million gallons?
A day?
Yes, we still are.
Still.
What's the update on that? I mean, I know that it's being allowed because you're defueling. The Department of Health is allowing that, and
We are required
Are
to
you-
maintain the capture zone at the Red Hill shaft. So in compliance with that requirement, we continue to pump. Now, the pumping rate is around 4 million gallons. We have requested that we go to a reduced pumping to go, I believe it was 1.8. We've had some back and forth letters with the regulators to try to come to a resolution, but we still do not have approval to reduce it to 1.8. At the same time, we are moving forward. We're installing right now a truck filling station that'll reutilize that water for cleaning of the tanks at Red Hill, but also that could be used for other uses, construction type, dust control, irrigation, anything like that. So we are installing a truck fill station that gives the capability to use the water in other areas as we continue to try to move forward to get to that reduced flow of the shaft in order to maintain that capture zone.
And what is the capacity of the truck, this installation that you've made, the capacity of that is what?
I don't have the details in front
Yeah,
of
we
me.
haven't, we're still working that process, but if you think of,
Hang on a minute.
It's not.
You guys are going to, you're trucking this water someplace, and you guys are going to be using it all over the place. Do you have a plan? Where are you guys using it? This water has petroleum products in it, so are you cross-contaminating other areas?
It is post-GAC. Everything, the truck filling station is it would be the same water that is currently being discharged into the stream that has already gone through and is tested. It goes through the granular activated carbon treatment that is Red Hill. Those GACs are in place. There was a third tank that is added that also has a resin that treats for PFAS. So it is fully treated water. It's that same water. That the plan is to utilize it for cleaning of the Red Hill tanks, but then we could also use it for other construction dust control. But that's just a capability we have not. We've not worked through all the details.
I understand it, but when the water coming out of the GAC filters, you're telling me is clean water? We could drink that water?
That water would meet the drinking water standards, but it is not. It is going into the stream.
So if you can clean that water up, how the hell can't
So-
can't clean up the water for these guys?
So it is the same plan that we have for the Milcon P716 that we've talked about in this past forum, which is the long-term solution for the Red Hill shaft. So it is a water treatment facility similar to what you'll see other locations within the island. Ernie Lau has a couple of the GAC filtration systems, but it is a Milcon that we're trying to move forward with. That is the permanent treatment.
Your
at the
Milcon
Red
is
Hill
going to take
shaft.
10 years for it to get through. By the time you get your funding, it gets started. If you can put those GAC filters up for the water you're pumping into Halawa Stream, my question is, why can't you give them clean water in your drinking water system if those filters are that efficient?
Well, the water currently is coming from Waiava, so.
The drinking water.
The drinking water is
water's
coming from Waiava. So it would be, it's something, I think it's something having to do with either the premise plumbing or something in the system before it gets to the home or after the home. It's something in the system
In
that
the
may be
drinking water
causing the
system.
PDH.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, though,
Of note, there is already, for the last 2 years, at AMR Housing, there is a water filtration system that is installed and has been in operation for over 2 years for the AMR neighborhood. But the results in AMR are consistent with the entire rest of the zone, that even the water, after it is going through a full treatment, is still having some of these same low-level detections,
TPH.
which again goes back to the hypothesis, the root cause analysis, everything that we're working that does lead and still point towards the most likely scenario is the chemical reaction that is happening in the test, because that is post-GAC treated water that is still
No, Captain Sullivan, there's a clear disagreement. Kathleen Ho just said nothing like that. She said that likely it's still in the system or in the premise plumbing. So that's your hypothesis. That's the Navy's hypothesis, because Kathy Ho did not just say that.
Okay, thank you.
And where is the plume?
Yeah,
What's the update on that?
Our question
Do we have an
is.
update? I don't have a latest update on the plume.
Has the pumping and dumping of the water resulted in the plume moving towards the capture zone?
The heat maps and everything that has been discussed, so there are regular meetings that we have in the remediation side with the Department of Health, the EPA, as well as there are roundtable sessions that we have with the USGS, with Board of Water Supply, with all those entities. And the heat map is showing that it is decreasing. It's not spreading. If you look at the time for over the last 2 years, the heat map and the contamination and the levels of detection has continued to shrink and to decrease.
Can I follow up on that? Because I don't think you can actually say that it's decreasing, because you don't know that. You're just looking at one point, and it could actually just be going deeper. If it rains, pushes it down, you're not going to see it here, but it's here. Doesn't mean it's decreasing. And if you're just measuring here, you're not going to see here, here. You don't have monitoring wells everywhere. You won't see when it goes beyond. We already know it went beyond. We don't know where it is. So I don't think you can say that.
I mean, I have to see.
We do have 37 monitoring wells at various locations,
It's not
but I
enough.
agree it is not enough, and we continue to move forward
And
with
they're
more
not
monitoring wells.
taking at all depths,
There are
correct?
various depths. that
And
are
you're
taken
only
out.
monitoring one thing, only TPH, not benzene, naphthalene, all the other things that move in different ways.
There are other analytes that are, I don't have the complete list on me, but there are other analytes and other things that are tested in this
It's very
groundwater
poorly
monitoring wells.
characterized, so we cannot say we know any of that stuff.
And we are moving forward with 2 groundwater modeling efforts. There is the Navy modeling effort that continues to move forward, as well as the University of Hawaii is doing their own independent groundwater monitoring to continue to get after this. I agree 100%. And the VI report and other reports, discussions that we have with Mr. Lau, we do need more monitoring wells, and we continue, and the Navy is committed to continuing to drill more monitoring wells in locations.
Okay, so it's very misleading to say that you know that it's being reduced or whatever. We don't know that.
I guess what I was trying to portray was what we have is the data that we have, and it is showing how it is changing, and I agree, it's not a complete and perfect picture, and the groundwater monitoring, or the groundwater models will continue to improve that picture, but based off of the data that we do have, we can see that it is decreasing. But I agree, it's not perfect data.
My colleague, Allison Fong, is online, and she would like to add some info.
All right. Okay, go ahead, Allison.
Hi, Lacey. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to add a little bit of additional context to your question about what's being sampled. So we did post onto our EPA website a fact sheet to explain what's being sampled in the water at Red Hill. This is across the drinking water source sampling, meaning where the drinking water is being pulled from, in addition to what's being sampled in the drinking water long-term monitoring and what's being sampled in our groundwater monitoring program that the Navy is running. So it explains, across, where TPH is being sampled for fuel constituents, including benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylenes, et cetera, fuel additives, de-icers, metals, and then also general water quality parameters to help folks understand what is being sampled for. So that, in addition to that ongoing monitoring, like Captain Sullivan said, at 37 groundwater monitoring wells today, and regulators are providing input as to where the monitoring well system needs to be further expanded. In addition to that monitoring program, the Navy is in the process of preparing the site assessment plan, which is the next step, where they need to identify where the contamination exists across the Red Hill site. As a first step, leading into remedial investigation, meaning, where to target remediation of where there's contamination in the aquifer.
And for those in the room, we do have a copy of what was just posted, which explains the sampling. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I wish we had this months ago. This is really great.
Well, it was because of you all and the questions you've been asking that made us realize we needed to put something down to help clarify the different types of sampling.
Can I clarify one more thing? Captain, you said that the water coming out of the aquifer, the one that you're going to truck around, that they're clean and it meets the drinking water standards. Are you talking about the 266 parts per billion, or how much TPH is in that water that you're going to be reusing?
The results from that are almost, if not always, it's been non-detect for anything leaving that GAC.
So it's not the same as the drinking water?
Correct. I mean, it is not considered drinking water, so therefore, I made the statement, and maybe that was not the correct way to state it, that it would meet, but it does not, and it is going. It has been treated, and it is not treated as drinking water, so therefore we're not considering it drinking water. It's groundwater.
Okay, my concern then for EPA and DOH, if they're going to reuse water that way and they're going to be dumping it, let's say in the golf course, that may be one thing, but we need to know where they're putting that water, and if we're going to come up with people getting sick downstream someplace in a residential area or in a construction project next to a residential area or in a Navy housing or a residential housing project. What guarantee do we have, or what kind of mapping or?
Walter, the discharge into the stream is under an NPDES permit. And so Department of Health issued that permit and made those determinations. It's not drinking water, it's because it is a discharge. It has to meet the Clean Water Act.
Okay.
But we will make sure that we work with the regulators if we do come up with any other opportunities that we can utilize that in that water. The primary focus of it will be for the actual cleaning of the tanks.
I'll tell you my concern. I mean, and I can't argue with you guys, but my concern is this. You're going to take this water and dump it in an area, in and around a school, in and around a residential area or whatever. One generation from today, 2 generations today, somebody's going to figure out maybe that was not such a good idea. I have a grandson that's 3 years old. And so in the next generation and his children in their generation, I just don't want to know, I just want to see that this water, although it may meet some requirements today, is not going to come up contaminated or come up into a contaminated area in the future.
Yes, sir.
We have enough of these projects and these different things where we have environmental action levels that have contaminated our land, and everybody's saying it's clean and it's okay, but what about the next generation?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm acknowledging the time. It's just after 7. We're going to close up our portion of this with Lacey has a presentation.
Yep, I'll make it very quick. Up there on the PowerPoint, you can see this is not a map in Hawaii. I just want to make this clear. This is a different jet fuel spill, but it's an example I wanted to show everyone about what I'm talking about, why it's important to not say that a plume is reducing or whatever, because you see 5 different maps there, and granted, this one's tracked by benzene vapor, not by TPH, but my point is, if you look at those 5 maps, you could easily say, hey, map 1 or 2 it's reducing there, but no, it's the same plume taking measurements at different depths. So you cannot say like, oh, we're just measuring at one depth and it's reducing. You don't know. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I would just add that, you know, the maps that we have for our plume, it's, you know, it's question marks all the way around the outside of it, right? Because that's what we have is the extent of the monitoring wells, right? And
Right.
so we actually don't know how far out it
Right,
goes.
and that's our intent, is
Yeah.
to work with BWS, put out monitoring wells so we can get ahead, you know, and not be behind all the time, looking forward to
Yeah,
try to
and
see. Okay.
it's still a catch up. Okay, so oh, sorry, Susan,
Do
go
you want to
ahead.
go over the 8 asks that we had of the Navy? That they're
Very,
going
very
to- very
quickly.
quick. Okay, the first one, the Navy is going to look into that NAVMEDP to see if they should be issuing a water advisory based on their own law, right? Is that, Admiral Barnett's going to look into that? Also, we're going to look into having someone from the SWARM team come at the next meeting, April 18th, right? Final premises plumbing. We're going to get a final report that has been peer reviewed. Did I understand that correctly?
That
Tell me if
it will be coordinated with the Department of Health and the EPA prior to
Okay.
release.
Okay. We're going to have an air monitoring person and briefing at the next meeting as well. Okay. Okay, you're going to try to get us a tour of Red Hill? Yes, okay. And then, Mark Williams, you're going to be looking into the software to get us a real-time app for the air monitors. And then Admiral Barnett's going to check with DHA for air quality monitors in homes, if that's a possibility. And then the last, I wasn't clear on this, will Chris's report get a peer review?
When you say Chris's report, I believe you're talking
The
about
contractor,
the
yeah.
tech memo
Mhm.
for the completion of the swarm. That is going to be and is currently being discussed and reviewed with the regulators. So it will be not just a Navy document, it will
Okay.
be peer reviewed by the Department of Health and the EPA.
Perfect, thank you. Is that it?
No, it's not. And then Admiral Barnett, you're a month late on giving us the information that you're giving to new residents in Navy housing?
No, but we do have
Do
that.
you have
We
that?
do have
Where
that.
did we get that?
It's the one, they did give it to us, but the information that you were looking for, giving the families a choice, that's missing. It's not
Right,
in there.
so we're going to have to make some changes on, we're going to have to look at that.
We'll get it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we have 13 people who would like to present testimony or ask questions online. And if there are people in the audience who would like to also present testimony or ask questions, you can go ahead and start lining up. We'll start with the folks online. The first two are just going to be read out by Rosalie. And then the third person, Meredith, if you could, get ready. So go ahead, Rosalie, whenever you're ready.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. The first question is from Rochelle Dietz. It's a two-parter. Do folks prefer I ask the first question and then pause, or ask
Yes.
both questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, why are the EALs still the incident-specific EALs when the incident ended once the water was cleared by DOH and EPA? If the incident is not over, how can the water be considered cleared and sheens be ignored even when EPA inspectors see them with their own eyes and residents continue to report skin and health issues? That's the end of the first question.
I feel like that is Department of Health for the EALs. Joanna? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, thank you for the question. I don't know if I am able to call Dennis onto the
Oh,
camera.
Yes.
We
One
get
moment,
the
please.
Notification?
He is a panelist?
Yeah, Dennis Lopez is with the DOH, and he at least was previously a spectator, and now we would like to make him a. There we go.
Thanks, Dennis.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Why are the EALs still the incident-specific EALs when the incident ended once the water was cleared by DOH and EPA? If the incident is not over, how can the water be considered cleared and sheens be ignored even when EPA inspectors see them with their own eyes and residents continue to report skin and health issues?
So the standard back in 2022 with the ISP of 266 was utilized with the understanding that that was a fresh fuel release. right? And then the advisory was cleared at 10%. And so into LTM, the use of that ISP continued, which was a conservative number compared to a weather profile, which would have been 455, but we chose to utilize a more conservative approach of 266. And I want folks to understand what TPH is it's a bulk measurement of hydrocarbons. Unfortunately, it cannot differentiate between fuel or other type of organics in the system. So I make it akin to like that 266 is an action level. It would promote a remedial response, such as flushing or replacement. Think about it as like a smoke detector. It tells you that an action is needed, right? But it's not going to give you clarity like what you're exposed to. You need to do more sophisticated tests. And so what folks unfortunately miss is that there are other parameters tested. The EPA has demonstrated that in their worksheet. There's 40 other compounds that's being analyzed. So it's not 8,000 samples of TPH. It's 320,000 compounds that's being evaluated. 8,000 sample locations, 40 different compounds, including BTEX, including TCE. And so you have to kind of look at this not with just the narrow part of TPH, but look at everything. Having said that, I would agree that the trend that the Navy has demonstrated, especially in the last round, shows an increase in TPH. That does not foster confidence in the community. And so what they have to do is demonstrate that they can rectify that and prove through the extended drinking water monitoring that the TPH, even the TPH value, has gone down. And if there were to be a detect, they should be able to differentiate whether it's petro or biogenic, meaning whether it's fuel or whether it is, like a fatty acid or some other compound that we do expect to see in drinking water, especially in premise plumbing. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, you
I
have
can
a
move on to
follow-up,
the next
Leslie?
question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question regarding the theorized testing issues. So only positives are lab errors, but when negative, the labs are doing well. If gloves are worn for all testing is done to the same method. Am I not correct that all tests would be positive since gloves are worn for all tests? If the Navy is releasing press releases that this is the answer to the problems, why haven't they provided the EPA and the DOH with the data packets yet? Is there no protocol for holding the release of press memos before other governing bodies approve?
Okay, good question. I think that goes to the Navy.
Yeah, so for the discussion, that the swarm, the group that came, that the tech memo that's currently being worked through goes and it analyzes all of the samples in period 7. So taking those that were detections versus those that were non-detect, and the reaction that we're seeing is occurring in all of those samples, whether detection or non-detection. So that whole body of proof is what we're putting together right now, and we'll be working with the regulators.
You need to clarify that. If it's non-detect, then how can that interact?
With non-detect, again, the limit of detection is 50. At 50 parts per billion, it's considered that is the detectable limit. But in all samples, you would have this noise that is below those detection levels. So when you break out the chromatogram for any type of sample, you're going to see these same patterns that will show some sort of the chemical reactions that are occurring. I can't get into all of the science that we could if we get the SMEs here to go back, but it's those reactions and those peaks that you're seeing over time that are consistent in all samples. Whether it raises to that threshold of hitting 50 or 80, they're there regardless. So it's showing that it's there in all of the samples.
So in the sample that you show as non-detect, it could be like 30.
But the detection capability, and I am not a chemist. I'm the CEO working this problem, but that is the detection level that the method and the laboratory is capable of. And I'm looking at some of these people who are much smarter than I at the actual chemistry of it. If you could elaborate and make sure that I got that right. It's important that we get that right.
Captain Sullivan, you're correct. The laboratories pretty much quantify kind of their capability. For the purposes of our response for Red Hill, we had determined that the method detection limit should be 50, and the lab should be meeting that. So going to Captain Sullivan's response, yes, potentially there could be below 50, but they can't reliably quantify below 50.
No, I guess, but that's the kind of false impression that you give everybody. If we're telling everybody it was non-detect, in our minds, it's 0. If it's 35 or less than 50, which is less than the minimum detectable level, then shouldn't you report it as less than 50 or less than the MDL, rather than saying non-detect?
I feel like that's possible.
Can I just say one thing on that? Every parent reserves the right to protect their child. Every parent should be getting crystal clear information, whether they want to serve their children with water that is contaminated at 35, at whatever. But when you tell people non-detect, you are lying. You are lying to parents, and you are not allowing them to protect their children. You need to be transparent.
I have one more follow-up.
You've already taken that right away for far too long. You need to give people the facts.
Thank you, Mandy. I have one follow-up question. Is there any effort to better hone the equipment to be able to detect things at a lower level?
I'm going to have to defer to, I mean, that is a capability that laboratories.
Yeah. I just feel,
I mean, there's no testing capability on this island that could even get to this point, and the laboratories
our
within the
testing
United
capabilities
States
are a joke. No, so we have to send everything away. But my point is that clearly we have a need, right, to know something more, more refined information. Is there an effort at all to do that?
50 is pretty low for
50
that.
is pretty low,
We
okay.
are pushing the limits of that method. And you at the previous CRI made that presentation that said anything between the method detection and the method reporting is an estimate.
Okay.
So we are really pushing the envelope, and it's really unlikely that you'll get reliable, quantifiable results below 50.
Okay.
And I agree. Non-detect, and I think in the drinking water, non-detect does not necessarily mean it equals 0.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's what created the misunderstanding, though, because and it's exactly the way Mandy said it. If it was 35 parts per billion, then do I have a choice of giving this to my child or not? Non-detect to everybody is going to mean your procedure didn't detect anything. Otherwise, it would be in the minimum detectable level. So reporting it the way you do is again, it's questionable. It creates suspicion, and more often than not, people are getting sick, and you're trying to convince them that it's a laboratory error.
Appreciate that comment, Walter. In the drinking water world, when I look at other utilities that issue their water quality report that they have to, it's a common practice to state it's non-detect if it's below the MDL. But it's more about then the messaging, right? And making sure we're clear when we say that.
Okay. Thank you for taking that
It would have
feedback.
been an issue if people weren't getting sick still.
Yeah.
And most utilities don't have jet fuel in their water.
Okay, so this is the public's time, so let's focus. Rosalie, is there one more question? Okay, and then
Yes,
we'll go to
one more.
Meredith, and then we'll
no,
go to
not
you.
from Rochelle. This is from the second individual.
Yeah,
That's
second
okay?
individual, yes, please.
Okay. It's 4 questions. They're all pretty short. First one is how many people on the panel live in one of the areas of the fuel leak, and how many use the water now? So that's just the first.
They're meaning us? No. So who lives within this zone of impact? Okay.
All of us.
All right. Thank you. Okay, next question.
The Red Hill Water Clinic only sees patients on Tuesday from 8 to 12. I'm trying to get an appointment. Can more days or hours be added?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Can we work on that?
Yes, we can work on that. If that person would want to reach out to us, let us know. I know they've had a reduced presence because they had some appointments that were going unfilled. But if anybody needs to get an appointment, just let me know. Okay, I'll make sure we can get them seen.
Okay, I think it's more about like people just should be able to get an appointment.
Right, they should be able to get an appointment. So
Yeah.
let me know if there's this is why this is important. When I hear these things, I can take care of them. So just let me know.
Thanks. I think
Admiral
this is us
Barnett,
letting
how
you
do
know.
folks contact you? Because you've said that before, and I've personally contacted you, and I've never received a call back. So how do folks contact you? You said that quite
You can
a few
reach me
times.
through, I'll make sure that we have our CRI email and my CRI point of contact, Nui, can get in touch with us.
So they contact Nui.
Yes.
They don't contact you.
He's my staff member, Major. He'll get in touch with me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Additional questions, Rosalie?
And just to clarify, this is from Peggy Wagner, if I didn't say that before, sorry. Third question is, my neighborhood, Capelina Beach Homes, has over 1,400 homes, all served by the Navy water. No one is currently told about the water crisis. New residents don't know about it. The Navy should provide information for this community too. Can that be provided?
Okay, we've provided information to that property manager out there. We will continue to provide, and I will make sure that we reach out to the management there to ensure that they get the information out. I do know that we have long-term monitoring booths that are out there for individuals to come up. I think we've had a couple over the past.
Several at the mini marts.
Yeah, several at the out at the mini marts and the school. So I'll make sure that we reach out again to the management and get the information out to the residents.
Okay, last one. You need a little bit of time. You've had 3 years since the leak contaminated our water. Yes, people are still sick. My husband, Navy NAVFAC veteran, is having cochlear implant surgery on April 15th because he went deaf in his right ear. We believe the contaminated water destroyed the nerve to his cochlear. I'm seeing my dermatologist next week for continued rashes, sores, and hair loss. Do you believe that people are still getting sick or not?
Yes, I believe that people are presenting to their medical professionals that they are having illnesses.
Okay. Meredith, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Aloha, guys, and thank you now more than ever for this opportunity to be able to provide comments and submit questions, especially after the chance to speak was trying to be revoked by the very party at fault. I no longer live on island, and it's meetings like this one that allow us who are affected by Red Hill to continue our vital engagement. We are inextricably linked to Hawaii because of what happened to us. I'll consolidate my questions for in reflection of time. So it's shocking to hear that just now we're going to be looking at other analytes outside of what's, maybe the fuel degraded compounds. Those things are also known as hops, and they're things like acids, esters, alcohols, ketones, and phenols. I'm not sure why these things haven't been tested before. Of course, I look at the website and all the analytes, and yet there's a ton there, but there's still not enough. I really hope that that's not a money issue. But to the DOH and Navy, what metabolites of these fuel-related degradation products are you currently testing for? That's number one. And number two, what is the earliest sample that the DOH has tested from the Red Hill shaft upon learning of its contamination? Had it been skimmed at all or cleaned at all? This is the closest way we may ever know what we were exposed to at the time. We have been relying upon the Navy's reports of historical and maybe not even exactly what was in those Red Hill tanks, plus those additives. We cannot move forward and we cannot test for what we need for until we know those things. There was an updated toxicity value by the EPA of hydrocarbons in September of 22, and it said that there was a reference dose reduction of aromatics, which was 60% of the majority makeup of JP5. This should have reduced the TPH screening level at that time by a level of 3, and that was September of 22. So there is a big problem, a glaring problem, to have updated toxicity information and do nothing about it. Lastly, I just want to make a statement about the venting of Red Hill when that comes to happen. The exposure assessment that the DOH did said that venting the tanks outdoors would be the identical exposure to when vapors were experienced indoors with a sheen, quote, a great inhalation risk. So please, please, please make that information available and let's do a last resort. What do people need to do? Great ideas on that. I just expect the absolute truth in all this and for all of you to do better by your people. Mahalo ni ola ika vai.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you. Do you have any responses?
The Department of Health took its first samples on December 5th, I believe. I'm going to have to ask Dennis to talk about the analytes that are being tested. Yeah. Dennis?
Yeah, so if you're looking for that that sample on 12.5, which you're correct would have given the, I believe the sample had like a free product on it. And I believe the department at the time only tested for TPH, which is just a gas chromatograph method. There are other 8,000 EPA series methods that would have gleaned as far as additional information, like the 8260 VOC and 8270 VOC. But at that point, the department was trying to figure out, where the source of the contamination was. And that thorough investigation was not conducted, so we don't have that sample that coincided with that one draw sample that was used to put that to confirm the advisory. Yeah, I apologize that happened. We did miss out on that opportunity.
So, hitting on you asked about all of the analytes and what is being sampled for. So the long-term drinking water monitoring plan is the plan that governs all of the 8,000 samples that we've taken. So it was approved back in June of 22 was when it was signed by the Department of Health, the EPA, the Navy, as well as the Army. And the complete table of all of the analytes is in Table 1 within that document on page 5 of 31. It's posted on the Navy website as well as the Department of Health and the EPA, and that lists the complete list of analytes. Those same analytes are that same list if you go to the Safe Waters website and you click on any dot, click on any, or type in any address, you will see that same list of every single analyte that is being tested for, as well as what the results are for those tests.
Okay, thank you. Aleem, I see that your hand is up. Is that intentional? Okay, go ahead.
Kalamai, I was just taking a little snack. Kalamai.
We can come back to you later.
No. Actually, what I wanted to do is I wanted to thank everybody who's already submitted their comments and asked their questions. I wanted to honor those who have left the area and are still being impacted by this, at least psychologically. And I wanted to ask Commander of this operation, Barnett, to please provide the public with documented or some sort of documentation where they can, more information about where they can contact you, what the time frame for follow-up would be, because I think it's really important for individuals to know when they can anticipate to get a response. So, I think that you need to develop better protocols for follow-up with these individuals. I feel as if the CRI members who are most impacted by this, Mandy and Lacey, have really done a lot of work to support these individuals. Heilani and others have provided water. So much has been done to support these communities, and I want you to reinvest yourself in this effort to provide support, extend the hours for the clinic, and provide individuals with opportunities to see clinicians at other hours, because most people in Hawaii work from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., so they're not going to be able to get there to see the clinicians. And if you really want to know about the health of these individuals, you will do everything you can to expand those clinic hours. So please do that. Please post your contact information, make it a lot more transparent. If you need to have a team that can help you to triage that, please put that team in place. And please do provide them with some follow-up timelines so that they know when to anticipate a response, since even members of the panel, the CRI, have not received any response in a timely manner. So I appreciate that. And again, Kalamai, apologize for getting caught there. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure that we post that information.
Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry? Okay, let's move to in-person testimony. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, first of all. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, is the mic on?
the mic up,
Yeah, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's better.
perfect.
Good, thanks.
Thanks for being here. I'm going to try to be quick. I have a couple comments and I have a couple questions. As for the peaks in the lab results that you were talking about earlier, Captain Sullivan, at low levels, those would not cause health reactions in people in the uptick of calls that you guys received. So have there been any correlational reports done for those with positive levels of TPH and health issues?
So I am not aware of any correlation.
I'll have to get back with you on that. I believe that the doctors were looking at a medical correlation in between that. So whenever we get they track our EOC calls and things like that. So if someone calls in and they're saying, I have, this, I'm not feeling well, these are my concerns, these are my problems, the doctors then take that. I have a doctor that's associated with our staff. They take that and then they follow up as applicable. But of course, it has to be that person's doctor. But we do kind of generally track to see what are some of the symptoms that are calling it or that are calling in,
Mm-hmm.
and then I forward that to say, hey, this is from the calls that we're getting. This is what people are presenting, so the clinic can be standing by.
So those are EOC doctors only, is that right? Are you saying
no? The
doctors
EOC
associated
is
with?
not only doctors. No, ma'am.
Oh,
No.
I'm saying associated with the reporting, because I've gone to my PCM a number of times
Okay.
and a number of different specialists because I've had issues related to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't seem to have any protocol, and they don't seem to annotate those in your health notes, which is a really big issue. So there's a disconnect there. And I've actually had to go on mainland for care. So my other question is, in our most recent tests, we've had tests with TPH October and November, it increased, and then we had another test in February. And the February one came back non-detect for TPH, but we had high levels of haloacetic acid, also known as HAAs, a byproduct of disinfection solutions. And so I did a little research because I didn't even know what that was, and I wasn't notified of that in the report that came back from long-term monitoring. It says, according to the National Institute for Health, HAAs are mutagenic, cytotoxic, genotoxic, teratogenic, and a carcinogenic, and they disrupt cellular metabolism. And when combined with chlorine, they induce oxidative stress synthesis and can cause genomic DNA damage. And in sensitive subpopulations, which I just happen to be, even though I'm not a pregnant woman or a child, which is normally those populations, you have an increased risk of experiencing reproductive and developmental health effects when consumed in disinfected water. So my question is, what organic compounds are combining with the chlorine in our water to cause HAAs? And is something being done about that? Because I haven't gotten a clear on our water the whole time we've been here. It's been either TPH, or other issues, and we're all concerned about the health issues and the long-term effects
Yes,
of
ma'am.
this. We're at a stage where we have enough knowledge of previous issues that have happened where we know that long-term health issues are very well possible, especially when you're having health issues now.
Yes, ma'am.
So any answers about those HAAs
Yeah,
in
go
the
ahead and go
water?
first.
I would like to, right after this, if you would mind sharing your information, I would like to see your results, and we
Sure.
can get an SME, and we could walk through all of your water results.
Uh-huh.
If you had an exceedance, you would have been notified, and if you were not, I need to know about that right away.
Yeah, it doesn't, so the values, this is another thing. So the values are detected on the HAAs,
Yeah.
but so when you guys do, even on the NAVFAC water testing reports, the values that you have for the ranges and what is actually reported are different measurements. So you don't make it easy for people to see,
Okay.
like to read,
No,
if it's just a common person.
And if you would share, I'd like to meet
Yeah,
with you after this. I'll
absolutely.
get your
I-
information and we can have someone sit down and go through all of your water sample
Sure,
results.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank
Okay.
you, Melissa.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, will you share that with the EPA water people too?
Yes.
Correct. I mean, they have
will.
the information as well, but we'll figure out the resident specifically and the
Right.
address
We'll
so that
follow
we
up
can
with you.
both look into it.
Yeah, and there is a drinking water regulatory standard for haloxic acids, so.
I think my came underneath the standard,
Hmm.
but they still were,
Detected.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's still a concern for me, especially with all the other contaminants that
Right.
Toxic soup. Okay. Ashley, go ahead.
Hello again. I was here last time at the CRI and we talked about water. I wanted to say thank you so much for the water that was delivered. As was mentioned, 10 gallons is great and it got us through a few days.
Right.
However, a family of 4, drinking, humidifier, etc., it doesn't last very long. My first question was about the fuel engineer. Is that Shannon Bentz that was here last time at the CRI?
Yes, she was here, yeah.
So, but is the fuel engineer that you guys have brought on your team, is
No.
it Shannon Bentz?
No.
No.
Okay. Just putting it out there that she is somebody that has built trust with the general public, or at least me personally, and I don't even know her personally. That was the first time I've met her. However, to have somebody on the team that has trust on this side would be really beneficial for these dialogues and this communication, because she is somebody who came out and said, like, well, whatever it was that she said, I don't know. But there is a level of trust that does not exist here,
Okay.
right? And I think that's common knowledge. She is a person that we would, if she's, saying something or giving advice or giving us, information, there's a different level of trust that would come if the team involves somebody that has the trust. So I just wanted to put that out there and find out, first, if it was her, because this is first I've heard of a fuel engineer on the team.
Right.
So my second question is, since the last CRI, what additional contaminants has the Navy added to their testing protocol?
We continue with the long-term monitoring program. We have not added to it, but the extended drinking water monitoring plan that we put together, as Dennis mentioned, as well as Corinne and others, it's focusing more on getting away from the ISP, getting away from a number when it comes to TPH, and it's focused on all of those analytes. So we have not added anything to the long-term monitoring, but we are refocusing on a different list that is the extended drinking water.
And the extended drinking water plan, which starts April 1st,
April 1st.
isn't finalized yet enough for us to review it. Is that right?
It is not yet.
Yeah,
It is
so-
still a framework, but we're working with the regulators.
It'll be done by April 1st.
If it's not done by April 1st, we will proceed with the plan that we have and adjust as it
Just as
gets
we go.
finalized.
Okay, so that'll definitely be on the agenda for the April meeting.
Understand.
Okay. Any other questions?
So there are no additional contaminants being tested for by the Navy. Even though all of us have, like, my house came back as non-detect, however, my son's mouth and throat were burning and he had GI problems. So even though we know that everything that was being tested for in our water is not on your, shows up as non-detect, there's nothing additional being added or looked at. And there's some discussion about PFAS. Is PFAS on the long-term monitoring test?
PFAS is not on the long-term monitoring, and the
Why?
Water Quality Action Team, that if you have concerns, that they're doing more than just the LTM test. They're looking, again, at bacterial, biological, any signs, any sheens, any other indications. So while it's not part of LTM, it's not an additional analyte we're sampling for. It is a change and an additional measure that we put in place for any resident that has concerns. So they're going out there, they're looking for all of those items.
So how do we go about requesting that extended test? Because we had the rapid non-detect, we had the LTM non-detect. Do I need to make an additional phone call and an additional request to have the PFAS tested for, or the additional contaminants, or whatever we want to call them that's in the water? It's frustrating that, why do I have to fight for this water? We pay almost $4,000 a month to privatized housing to live in a house that I have to find filters for. My husband has to research the filters for. We have to install them, and the water's still not clean. That's all on us. I don't have the budget of the United States Navy. I'm a 4th grade educator, but it's on me to figure out what's in my water or to fight for you guys to come out and test the water.
I understand your concern. We will be testing for some of the things that you are concerned about starting April 1st, okay?
And that list will be released to us?
You will have access to the list, and much like on the long-term monitoring where you can go in and see what we're testing for. So we do realize after being here that part of this is we're going to have to get the word out on what we're testing. So there's going to have to be a rollout plan, an education plan, so we can show what we're doing and what we're testing and the process, which is some recommendations that we've had from the EP and the DOH on communicating with the family. So we will make sure that we communicate with you and tell you what we're testing for. Okay.
And on the topic of the filters, that's something I brought up when Admiral Wade came to my house, was that, this is something that we're having to do ourselves. But there's been no movement to give these to families to improve the quality of life or to try. I get that we don't know what we're trying to filter out, but it's the United States government. It's the United States Navy. I don't understand how we can target missiles on the other side of the world, but we can't figure out what's in my water that I'm giving my 4-year-old. It's so infuriating to hear. Mr. Williams, you weren't here last time, but to hear a talking point repeated about PFAS when I don't even know what the acronyms you're saying about ACO are, but if it's what's in my water, shouldn't I know? Right. Shouldn't we be informed?
Right.
I don't care that it's outside of the protocol.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I will follow up with Admiral Gray on the filter issue.
Well, it was something that we discussed as just if these contaminants keep happening,
right.
If there are long-term issues and clearly the tests aren't showing anything, then something still has to be done. Mr. Chun brought it up, we don't care what's in the water. We just want it to be clean. We want it to be filtered out. And if it's not in the system and you're saying it's not in the hot water heaters, then where is it? And why when I put filters on my sink and on my fridge or on my, we're triple filtering our water out of our sink to drink right now, all of a sudden the rashes go away. So I figured it out. I figured out how to filter my water on my own through trial and error, but it's still the rest of the community.
Okay.
It's not just about one. It's all of us. It's the schools and the CDCs and the people who work on bait. I feel like you guys see numbers, but that's not what we are. It's our children. And it's frustrating.
I understand. I don't see you as a number. Okay. I don't see anybody here as a number.
I appreciate that, but we're treated like numbers.
That is not my intent, and I don't want it to feel that any of my staff or anybody thinks that the folks that are calling in or talking to us are numbers.
I appreciate that.
Every day, I sit at my window and I look out and I watch kids play. I see parents going to school. I see people driving. I don't see them as numbers. I see them as people. You have my word. You have our word that we're going to work our damnness to figure this out. This is why this is important for us, to hear what's going on and to offer ideas so we can walk this, and get it right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Melody. Sorry, Melody has her hand up and then Walter.
I didn't hear whether your April 1st list is going to include PFAS.
We're still working the full list. The PFAS is a totally different subject that we have to work with the EPA, the policymakers in DC on. There's certain things that we can test at the water source, but I don't want to get in front of what the process is, and but it is in work. We are working with the regulators on PFAS and PFOA testing.
Does that mean yes, it will be?
That means that we are working into that right now.
No, it means you're working on it.
We're working on it.
However, Captain mentioned about the water that's being taken out and trucked out. It is going through GAC as well as something else that will, something with PFAS. So I'm not quite sure.
You're talking completely, you're talking groundwater versus drinking water. Remember, all of our water comes from the Waiava shaft. It's not coming from the Red Hill shaft. And the PFAS sampling that we have been talking about is all related to PFAS sampling in the groundwater at Red Hill, not part of LTM
You do
or
realize
drinking
how
water
groundwater works, though, right?
I do.
The water doesn't originate from the shaft.
Understand? But the Wyava shaft is 6 miles away. It is not in the Red Hill.
Yeah, but I think part of Melody's point is that
Understand.
you are running that water, the Red Hill water, through PFAS resin, a resin to remove PFAS. And the point is that can we do that for drinking water from the Red Hill area? Is that
Okay, I'll look in.
Thank you. Okay, I'm doing a horrible job of regulating the time. It's already 7:45. So Walter, is it absolutely important that you ask the question? Because people.
Just 1 minute. I just want to repeat again. You guys own the system. The Navy drinking water system belongs to the Navy. These guys are regulators. They don't take samples. They don't fix your water. They don't give water to these people. It's you guys. So every time you guys give us an answer that, well, it's up to the regulators, they don't control your water system. And that's what these people are trying to tell you.
Okay.
Really quick, Marty.
Yes.
Where are we at with water distribution? So Ashley testified last month. Admiral Barnett, I truly appreciate by the time that she came home, she did have water like we requested. Kudos and thank you. I appreciate that Admiral Gray came out to her house. We made a big deal out of it. We probably snapped some photos. But Ashley and her family hasn't heard it from anyone from the Navy ever since. And so she comes here today and she's in tears and she's telling you about her family. And then maybe you'll get her some water today. But then what happens, 2 weeks from now when that water runs out? Why can't we go back to distributing water, to having water distribution points so that people can go and get clean water anytime they want? Because Ashley represents one of 93,000 people that you have on your system.
I'll have to look into the water distribution process.
Water distribution
I'll look
points
into
like you had it.
Major Fine, I'll look into the water distribution process and see if there's any improvements.
Okay.
And also, sir, I appreciate you continuing to call me by my rank, but I serve here in my civilian capacity. It's Mandy. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mandy, for your passion. It's appreciated. My name's Tiffany. I'm going to read a few remarks. I'm a civilian. Up until 2 weeks ago, I lived with my family in the privatized housing called Capilina Beach Homes. We've been there for 6 years, and I consider my body at this point a walking, talking, long-term water monitoring system. We were told by Navy and the housing management not to worry, it's safe. The alternative water they were trucking into us, into our community, was out of an abundance of caution. I can't tell you how many times we heard that, but I'll save you the full history of my situation in the last couple of years, but I've been diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia, toxic exposure related to alopecia. Yep, that's a nice bald spot. And toxic optic neuropathy. I'm going blind in my left eye. I was fine before we moved out here. And 3 years into our stay, this is what's happened. A while back, I went to my optometrist for an overdue screening, and she saw something and sent me to an ophthalmologist. I didn't even know there was a difference. She sent me to a neuro-ophthalmologist who sent me to a retina specialist. It's presenting like glaucoma, but it's definitely not glaucoma. But ultimately, I'm going blind. Admiral Barnett, the Navy housing and your leasing offices are distributing literature and an additional addendum in the lease about historical and ongoing water quality issues, is I think what you had said. I want to be very, very clear on this. Has the privatized housing management at Capilina Beach Homes, which is on the leased Navy land and the Navy water line, has Kathy Mara been advised to provide that same information to the existing and new residents? And can we see a copy of that literature?
I'll have to get back with you on that. I know I've given direction that the same information that's passed out at the other two partners are passed out also up there, but I will have to confirm that. I don't know if it was given to Kathy, but I will find that out.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Susan, do you want to go ahead now? And then we'll go to the, because I think you might be the last in-person testifying.
Is anybody online?
There are several people online. There's 10 people online. So
I really don't think that this is appropriate for the discussion that you guys are doing right now, unless you guys want me to go through it.
Okay. If you want to wait, if you don't mind waiting, that's great because there are a bunch of people who are
I
online.
don't mind waiting.
Okay, excellent. All right, Rosalie, let's go to the next batch of 3.
Great. Lindsay Ladnier has 2 questions. Number 1 is, what I'm hearing is the EPA does not have enough data to state whether or not it's a lab error or lab reaction to determine what exactly is occurring within the testing process that indicates TPH levels are elevated. Is that what is being stated? The language was confusing regarding it correlates. What is it? That's the end of the first question.
So, as a general matter, we don't have the data sets that the Navy is, that we're expecting to get from the Navy in order for them to show that the hypothesis is panning out. We did do some of our own evaluation of the data. We pulled it out of data sets and we looked at the chromatograms, and they appear to correlate. So again, it was just based on a very limited data set, and we're still awaiting data from the Navy.
Follow-up question, Rosalie?
Yes, number 2, will all the bacteria, fungus, etc., chloroform, however it results, that also is known to grow in fuel and other products which only the Navy knows were in the tanks, be included in the extended long-term monitoring plan? That's the end of the second question.
So the analytes that are included in the extended drinking water monitoring plan are focused, again, not on an ISP, not on the TPH, but instead on all of the constituents that would make up the fuel, as well as many other analytes for general safe drinking water.
Thank you. Okay, next question, Rosalie.
This is from Lindsay Wilson. Question number 1, if these TPH samples are all lab errors, what is the Navy's theory for the current visible contamination and health impacts that have been documented by the media, EPA, and Navy reports? Secondly, what actions is the Navy taking to get to the bottom of the current water complaints and health impacts?
That's the reason why for the first question, I'm going to have you repeat the second one, but the first one, that's why we're asking for our partners here, EPA, DOH, and also the family members and those who are impacted to get to their medical professional so we can help track this, so we can get folks to the Red Hill Clinic and help track this and work with DHA to actually see what's causing this so we can, fix the issues. And the second question, can you repeat that one, please?
Yep. Secondly, what actions is the Navy taking to get to the bottom of the current water complaints and health impacts?
Yes, and that kind of flows into the same thing, but what I will tell you is that with the swarm team that we have put together working with the regulators, also with meetings like this, working with CRI and other stakeholders, we are looking, at the totality of everything that's going on. James has a good slide there that shows actually all the different things that we're doing here as far as the water quality action team. We've increased, we've made it a more robust team to actually come in and do a little bit more listen to the person, do a little bit more investigative work on that with the compliance monitoring, which is what all water systems use across the United States. But we also have our extended drinking water plan that we're working on, that we're working with the regulators on, and we will be testing on 1 April. I've also directed a deeper dive and a look at our drinking water system operations and the maintenance to make sure that we're using the right maintenance in our system. And then lastly, the key to this is working with our medical partners at DHA. They do have a webinar, I believe, on the 9th of April. We'll make sure that information gets out so those that are concerned can actually dial in.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Rosalie? Next person.
2 sort of comments and 1 question. Should I do the comments first or the question
Yeah,
itself?
just read it. Let's go.
Okay. I don't understand why they would even test for TPH at this point if they are claiming preliminary that the TPH is lab error. Why waste time and money? Instead, only test for analytes, possible contaminants. Do you want to respond to that?
I just want one clarification. As we mentioned earlier on, it is not lab error. It is a sample method that it was not originally intended. So it is not an error at the lab. It is the method, the best method that we have, and the method being utilized. But it is not a lab error.
Next question, comment?
For me or from the panel?
Are we on the third one already?
Yeah, let's, still Lindsay Wilson, the Navy could build a huge amount of trust if they didn't scapegoat the responsibility of public health and posting a water advisory to DOH EPA when we know there's a water contamination associated with health problems. And then a question to the EPA DOH, would you recommend that the Navy post a water advisory given the ongoing evidence of visible contamination and health complaints related to the current water? And that's the end of the question.
Sorry. So EPA has already said that that the Navy needs to investigate the root cause. An advisory under federal regulations requires an exceedance of maximum contaminant level or an imminent threat. So at this point, you know, we continue to need to have a thorough investigation, and that's what we're focused on.
I would agree with what Amy has said. In addition, however, tagging on to what Walter said, it is the responsibility of the purveyor to provide safe drinking water to its customers. As in the Maui fires, it was the county that put out the advisory advising their customers not to drink the water as well.
Thank you. Okay.
Is she going to have the slides put up,
Yeah.
Rosalie?
Yeah, Rosalie, can you please put up Susan's slides? Okay, I'm anticipating that we are not going to have enough time to get to the other 10 people who wanted to say something. I'm thinking after Susan, for the two people who want
to make it fast.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So for the two people who do want to say their questions and comments, we could stay on a few more minutes after and have them, and then the rest who are in writing, we can add them to the question spreadsheet that Susan has been working on with NUI, and try to get answers to your questions at the next meeting.
Okay, so my presentation is basically trying to represent in my own way what we heard at the FTAC. So there were, I know this was Captain Sullivan.
Here, you can just point to the thing next to you, right there.
Oh.
Yeah, just point to that. There you go.
I'm not used to this. Okay, so go to the next two slides and then come to this, the overview. This is Captain Sullivan's slide, I hope.
Yes.
And so I added some color to it and some context. And some of the things that need to be done, I am not putting you down or anything, sir. I'm just showing you my way of doing data that may make the presentations to the public easier to understand. Got
Appreciate it. Absolutely.
So the slide didn't have data labels. And then this column right here, I mean, I racked my brain for hours to figure out that equation. You can tell me afterwards. I could not figure that out. I added cells for the total numbers of samples and detections. And I really don't like the use of percentages because it's not telling you enough. It's more for a management people to say, well, look, we've only got 29% or we've only got 6%. But it doesn't mean anything for residents because that's just the way percentages are usually presented to leaders. And if you don't have it completed, just don't put in progress there. Okay, go to the next slide. This one was on the website, so I go there often. And I don't know who put it up here, but again, I had to put labels here And when you're talking about percents, it just doesn't help people know that what's actually going on. And even if you'll never get 100%, because 100% is going to be the 266 or whatever it is. But include the number of samples rather than just saying over 8,000. And the scales, these are measuring 1 month, and these are measuring 3 months.
The periods as laid out
Right.
in LTM, that's
I
how
know,
they're
but
broken
see,
out.
that skews it, right? Because this is 3 months. People wouldn't know that, right? They would have to read everything that I'm reading and you're reading to know that the long-term monitoring here was 3 months each bar. That's why when I present, I present monthly. But that's okay, I'm just talking. There's nothing wrong, right? I do things differently. And I wrote the notes right here. Now can you go to one more slide? Averages. Averages tell us nothing. And when you're using averages of the total number of detects, divided it by, it does not do people any good to do this. It does leadership good because it doesn't look like it's doing anything. It's staying pretty level. But we're not talking about things that are staying pretty level. I don't know who did the slides, but I added all the information under here as far as the sample sizes and the detections, because that's important to know more than a percentage. This line here is 266. It has nothing to do with averages. And all of these, like I'm saying, are the average detections. It just looks good for leadership. I think that's the last one. Is there one more after that? No, okay, now we'll go back to the one that I made. So I looked at all the slides, and I said, if I wanted somebody to not have to look through all 3 slides, what would I do to make it clear? Okay? So I made sure that they would know that these were 3-month periods, and those were 1 month. I'd make sure that they knew the sampling size and the detect size. I'd make sure that the scale was right to go with the detections. And I would take the averages, I put them in yellow just because they stick out. I would take those and I wouldn't even have these on here. I would just leave it at the facts. The facts are that 19% of the 897 samples that were collected, there's 174 detections, and that's where you get your 19%. It's just my style, only because when I present to the public. I'm not presenting like when I was working to leadership. So I know the different things that look good and maybe don't. Long-term monitoring, when you look at it like this and you know that they're 3-month periods, then I call that apples to oranges. But you may not think of it that way, okay? And I think that's it. The rest of it you can read.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Susan.
sorry.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's try to get to the 3 people who wanted to speak their comments and questions online, and then call it a meeting. So if everyone's okay with 15 more minutes. Rosalie, can you help the next person?
Tracy, you're up next if you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. I just have, let's see. I have a question or two questions. I want to keep it very simple. First, I just want to say that thank you for hearing me. I had a liaison who was sent to my house on behalf of the Navy. And she was sent to my house to relay information I would call disinformation with me. She said she was hired, moved to the island, and trained to do this job specifically, and that she was the only one doing the job. I got that information from her and a chief who sent her to my house. I would like to ask, who is training this liaison, and can you please publicize the materials that you're using to train them, or train her specifically, and that she is spreading disinformation, very disingenuous, a lot of lies at my straight to my face on my couch in my house. Not appreciated. So yeah, can you please answer that question for me? Can we have some training materials that you're using to spread your teachings?
So the individual that you're talking about, I know her very well. Now, she was not on the island. She did move here and accept that position when the individual who was in that position before took employment and moved off the island. So she is new, but she was brought here. She came here for this specific job. The training and everything she receives is the day-to-day. She is involved with everything that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, participating in the meetings, listening to the briefs, the discussions. So that is, there's not a handbook, obviously, as you know, for training any of the folks that we have that were willing to join our team to take on this very, very important mission. So I wish I could give you a handbook, but there is no handbook.
Lila, the liaison.
Yes, I know exactly who you're talking about, and I ask, I am sensitive. I want to make sure, because there have been times in the past where some of our staff members who are doing the best they can have been publicly, on Facebook and in different forums, attacked and criticized. So I please do not use her first or her full name. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Okay. So are you saying that there's no training material, that you haven't trained them to my house?
She receives training, but there's not like a class that you would go to for something like this. This is a day-to-day staying current and understanding the information, participating in all these briefs, and listening. So there is no handbook. It is a day-to-day, you learn every single day, and you share the information that you've learned. You answer questions, but also when you don't know the answers to those questions, you take it back and you find the answer or find an SME that could provide that answer.
Okay. Thank you for that. So one of my questions was to her, if she said she would ask somebody. I wanted to know why I was denied enough bottled water to take a bath. So on my birthday, I wanted to take a bath. I don't trust the water. The water is not safe. Is there something in the water? It's still not safe. So I wanted to know who was the one that they are contacting to get this authorization to give or not give me bottled water. And then I'd like to know, well, actually, yeah, that's it. Who's not authorizing enough bottled water so that I can take a bath?
This is Admiral Barnett. I'll take a look at that. The installation is in charge of distributing the water, so I will reach out to the coordinator for the water portion of that and figure out a way ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We
Miss.
have Chris up next.
Go ahead. We can see you, but I think you might be muted still. There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Chris Antoine. Thank you for having me. I felt it was better if I just say it verbally, but these are always very difficult for me. There's just been too many meetings for 2 years, and not enough action. And our family has suffered. So first is a question that I just wanted to ask that came up during this was DOH had samples they took, and I know they posted the December 9th online, but they were at my home December 10th, and I'm talking December 2021 during Red Hill, early days. And they also came out again that Monday on December 14th. Was told all of these would be posted online. Those samples have yet to be posted online. Are you ever gonna post our home's sample results from December 2021 that the DOH took? I know the Navy took it too, but the DOH came out, personally took it as well, and I have yet to see a result. So are those going to be posted similarly to the December 9th one that was put out? And why was it stopped, or what happened? So I do have that question, and then I have a statement after.
Okay, I'm not sure which address your
Capilina Beach Homes.
Okay, so I would need to get the address so that we can find that data.
4976 Keela Place B. And it's not just my building. It was a whole neighborhood visit from DOH. I'm not the only one. So I'm telling you the dates. You would know when your staff went out there. So it wouldn't matter.
All right.
It wasn't like I called and said mine only.
I understand. Thank you. I will take it back to my team and figure out why it's not posted. And if I need to get in touch with you, I will try to find your contact information.
Yeah, go through CRI and they can contact me, please.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do you have a comment?
Sorry, it's like 11. 11:15, so my apologies. Yes, so
I think we might
I want to know what the sense of urgency to fix the whole water system is, including the pipes, the delivery system leading up to all the buildings, the hot water heaters. If any one of you were living one day with your family and then watched each of your children fall sick and ill, and then you yourself fall ill, watch your neighbors get sick, multiple days and weeks go by, you witness ambulances coming in and out of your neighborhoods, knowing we're all sick. Would that increase your sense of urgency to fix it? That already happened over 2 years ago. If you saw your healthy child go into a wheelchair and cry and scream in pain when their skin was touched, if you watched your young child in pain for over a year to even urinate and try to scratch their own skin off till it bled, if you watched your 4.0 A student get so sick they struggle to finish high school only to find out they now have permanent colon damage and lifelong GI health issues, if you and your children had to have surgery just to live now, would that be enough? Would it be enough to expedite your request for funds to remediate the land and water that needs healed so people can still live on that island? We couldn't live there if we wanted to stay alive. I don't think you understand. Pardon me, I just hit a button and I didn't mean to. I don't think you can comprehend how drastically our lives have changed from somebody's decision who ran Red Hill, somebody's decision to not tell us not to drink the water, to let us have our Thanksgiving dinners in it, and to bathe my child in it and have birthday parties in my backyard with water, and then watch them all go sick. I don't think you fully understand that I've had to fly so many new places, meet so many specialists, lose organs, lifelong issues we are watching and monitoring. I can't even list the things of health, but the fact that it matches like more than 8,000 other people that I have met that had this water. I don't think it was just us. I can't imagine all 4 of us in one family all falling ill all of a sudden and always being healthy before that. This makes no sense other than we have an environmental issue, and I expect there to be some kind of sense of urgency. There seems to be no urgency, and I would expect that if it happened to you, then maybe you would be calling on Congress every goddamn day and saying, I need help. We don't have enough money to put these new pipes in, and I need help from the pipes from not just me, but all the way into the homes, into the schools, into the buildings, into the businesses, all down Kamehameha Highway, all down to Ruby Tuesdays, all into the airport, all these public areas people use that are on Navy water lines. They're never notified about this issue. And you're not sampling enough businesses. That 5% is too low, and you know it. I just need a sense of urgency, and I wish you guys would understand what you've done to all our families and impoverished us and done nothing. I'm civilian 100%. I have no Navy, no military. I'm just affected because you were the water provider that my home had. So that's the luck of my family for that time frame. So I expect a sense of urgency. I cannot believe that it's been over 2 years and there hasn't been a pipe changed to a home, because this whole system has been compromised. So I would hope that you understand my testimony comes from my heart, and that I'm trying to urge you to all rise up a bit more and push yourselves even further than you think you could have pushed yourselves. I do come from a military family. My mom was in military, but I'm not. I don't understand. I couldn't go anywhere to get help. You wouldn't even pay for my hotel. You wouldn't give me water, wouldn't give me anything. I had to fly and lose all my stuff and everything I had built just to save my children. And I would do it again because I want to save my children. But you guys need to understand the impacts you've done to so many families. I'm just one.
Thank you, Chris. We really appreciate your testimony. And I share your aggravation and frustration over the lack of urgency. Any response? Thank you very much,
Marty,
Chris. Take care.
Marty, since there's no response from the Navy, I can't. I would like to ask, you said there was no textbook that you hand out to Lila Castellano, or however you say her name, or anyone else. But Lacey's brought it up before, okay? Are any of your people that are going into these families' homes getting trauma-informed training? Because every person that you've heard here testify tonight has experienced a major trauma. So is Lila Castellano or any of the other people going into these people's houses, are they getting trauma-informed training?
I'm unaware of that training that's going on, but I'll check and see into that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more people and then we're done. Jamie and then Emily. Go ahead, Jamie.
Aloha, everybody. Aloha, CRI. Thank you for allowing us, CRI, and fighting for us all to speak tonight. This has been a very informative meeting. I know that a lot of the Navy personnel that are there right now were not here for previous leaks and were not on the water line. My question is 2-part. Forgive me, I'm a little tired after traveling for 10 hours today to get one of my children medical treatment, which we'll touch on that. But I do have a 2-part question regarding the ground soil and water testing. How do we not know what kind of tests to use or compounds for TPH when there's been testing for contaminated soil and groundwater with vapor intrusion published reports going back to October 12th and March 2013? This testing and reports were done by the DOH and the military. The reports included benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, xylenes, naphthalenes. If we have been monitoring the soil and groundwater and vapor intrusion from Red Hill and pipeline leaks, documented even further back to 2011, how are you guys sitting there telling all of us you do not know what to test for regarding the TPH compounds? What were the tests being used during the 2014 leaks? And how is it that there's testing being used in 2023 and 2024 that struggles to test down to the 50 and 80 parts per billion level when the maximum action level, the EAL, was 50 parts per billion in 2014? I specifically asked this because today, one of my children who struggles greatly had the pleasure of traveling for hours to be seen at a clinic or a facility that treated her from 2018 to July of 2020, right before we returned to the island. She suffered greatly at 3 years old with gastrointestinal, urinary tract, headaches, hair loss, unexplained rashes, throat issues. And I walked into that doctor's office, and it was the same doctor that treated her back then. That doctor apologized to me today. Said she didn't know what to look for because she didn't know. They're not trained to look for unicorns and zebras in the medical field, which is what you guys have created and what you're continuing to create by denying the long-term harm. Those were the exact words she used. Then I was told that there was no need for follow-up care, not to make a follow-up appointment because it's out of their scope of care. And this is in a bigger city. This is now the third hospital, bigger facility, that has said that we are out of the scope of care. But this is the same doctor that treated my daughter for 3 years before we went back to that island. I asked you, Admiral Barnett, if you would feed this water at 50 parts per billion to your grandson. I will ask you again, knowing now the history of my child that I have to share publicly in order to fight for care, because there is not adequate information put out nationally for the families on the island and for the families leaving the island. And now another facility has been crossed off, and we're the zebra, we're the unicorn. The long-term harm is very real. My daughter sat there pleading with her, telling her today she cannot swallow. Pleading with her, telling her how bad her stomach hurts her. Still to this day, about her losing control of her bowels. They wanted to take an x-ray. She didn't want to take the x-ray because she's scared of radiation or any more contaminants. That's what you've done to my child. Would you do that to your grandson, Admiral Barnett? When are you going to learn from the history in the years past? When are we going to tell the truth and take accountability? When are you going to help the families? Because you're not helping the families right now. This narrative, repeating over and over, we don't know what to test for. You've done 2-year long-term monitoring for years. When are we going to learn? Walter Chun asked about generational. 10 years from now. My daughter's 10, sir. We're 10 years later. And I sit here and watch my children struggle. I've talked about this repeatedly. And I listen to testimony after testimony. And then admirals had the nerve to stand in my driveway, stand in my home, when I told them that I can smell and taste acetone as they're turning bright red in my home just from the AC vents blowing on them with the vapor intrusions. Denying that's, oh no, not the Navy. We don't use that, there's no way. Then test results come out, acetone is there. Others have testified, like Lacey stated, it seems to be When the tests are negative, everything's right on point. But when the tests come back positive, there's lab errors. The only errors I see is the narrative that's coming from this panel and the way that you are handling taking care of your own. When are you going to stand up and take care of your own? Stop the nonsense. Invest the money into all the publications you're putting out of false narratives into the families that desperately need help. 2 days a week is not an adequate clinic, and you wonder why people don't want to go. They're terrified. They know they're not going to get the help. It's time to do the right thing.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate your testimony. Any response?
Jamie, thank you for your comment, and I hear you. I want you to know.
I hope you do.
I want you
You've
to know
said that before, and my kids are still struggling. I didn't have a choice. I still don't have a choice. I'm driving 10 hours and then staying up till 1:30 in the morning to have a 5-minute conversation, pleading for help, along with so many others.
Yeah.
I'm sick of hearing, I hear you. Make the change. Change course. Please. Not just for my family. We're 15 years into this.
Any response?
No response.
Okay. All right. We're very sorry for everything that your family is suffering, Jamie, and trust we will follow up and make sure that they follow through. We're doing our best we can. All right, we have our last person, Emily. Sorry, wait, I can't hear
Emily,
you,
you're
Emily.
muted.
1 second. I think your mic muted.
Hi, and my last name is actually Toledano, now not Sturgis. I'm saying that because I would love to hear, maybe have a conversation with the Navy after this, because not everything has to be discussed here. But I'm wondering, especially with all these conversations tonight, trying to find what actual contamination is. I don't know, I have a picture of, wait, let's see, shoot. Can y'all see the bottom of this mug? So this, it kind of looks like dried foam, kind of as a coral. Can y'all see that through the video?
Yeah.
Yes.
The real question, sorry. So that came through my water this was back in May 2022. And NAVFAC was actually concerned about different pictures because there was also all kinds of sheen on the water. And an actual chemist came to my house and he was so concerned, he left with a mason jar of water from a hot water heater. He was like, Eureka, like he thought he finally found the problem. At the time, the EOC was actually saying I was the only person to call. That Navy chemist acknowledged that they were swarmed with calls from my area. So that was upsetting to hear the two different stories. But I'm just trying to get help for myself. But so that was I'm going blank out of nervousness. Sorry. This was May 2022. I finally, March 2nd this year, got some answers. They never posted the hot water. They would never tell me anything. March 2nd, I actually said I'm going to the media if I don't get a call back. And I'm sorry, I don't like to be a person that threatens that. But I tried to be sweet about it. I said it's been 2 years. So they did call me back on March 2nd that day. And she apologized and said she's the only person working that. So I guess one side question that you don't really, more of a rhetorical question is why is there only one person on this if it's taking 2 years to get back to people? But she got back to me, but in her email, she said that the lab didn't give y'all the individual analytes for the hot water, that it just said my water was fine. So, but she's gonna try to get the results. But she said, so if that's the case, this isn't chlorine, that's what I was hoping for. I have really bad PTSD from this. We know it's not chlorine, we know it's not calcium or something like that. So one of my questions for the Navy is, would y'all be willing to test this? Because we're spending, it seems like, an enormous amount of taxpayer money running around looking for the problem. And I have one of the problems in mugs that I still kept, and I have videos of it coming out of my hot water heater. So to show that this was really there. March of 2023, so almost a year later, I won't go into details, but someone not the Navy helped me get a new hot water heater, so this stopped being a problem. So I just wanted to see if y'all will test this. And then I also just wanted to let y'all know like how bad of PTSD this is causing the community. And I know a lot of people have shame about this subject, and I'm just over that. So I thought maybe I'd be a good person to let y'all know. I have this discussion all the time with my husband, and I ask like, is it going to take a suicide in our community for them to take this seriously?
Okay.
Not treat this like a cover up or a game, and prioritize what I'm assuming is liability over our health. Like, I feel like our health isn't the priority, because if our health is the priority, you would test this. Like, you would have come back to my house and said, this isn't chlorine, this isn't bacteria. We tested bacteria. We tested these other things. It's not that. Maybe it's AFFF. Maybe we need a test for that. Maybe there was some of that in the fire suppression line. Like, that's what someone would do that cared about our health. And instead, you went crickets for 2 years. I am now on antipsychotics because my PTSD is so severe. I dissociate that bad, and I don't care if the whole world knows, because I know I'm not the only one. I have 2 psychiatrists. I have 2 therapists I meet with twice a week. Like, and I just want to share this with y'all. I don't want this to be a long venting session, but I just want you to know how severely this is affecting us. For comparison, I went through Hurricane Katrina. I think everyone saw the videos of New Orleans, August 29, 2005, very life-changing event. I was an intern at Tulane. Obviously, that didn't exist after August 29th. That experience of my life turning upside down, being displaced in Texas for 9 months, is nothing in comparison to Red Hill. And it's a lot of it. It's having this and not the lack of help, the fact that we're being told it's gloves, but we have this in our cups. This is not gloves from the mainland. And so I don't want to just keep going and going, but
Emily,
would the Navy be willing to
the
test
CRI
this?
members
And
we would like those mugs if it's possible for us to arrange an opportunity to get them from you. We'll help you with that. Do you have any response?
No, I was going to say that we would send our team over to help. I'm still going to send my team over after you take the mugs to just go through and with a fine-tooth comb and sit down with her and see if she has any other concerns.
If you could make sure you get us
If you
her
make sure you get us the
information, her
address, we
so
can,
that
and we can send someone over.
Okay, we'll work that out. Okay, so we are at 8:30, so we have to stop. Emily will follow up with you afterwards. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for your diligence. I promise next time to be even more strict about the time controls. I think it was a very productive meeting, and the next meeting will be April 18th. And I have just been reminded that I have to say thank yous, which I didn't do before. I want to thank the Olelo team. They are amazing and have been helping us. Thank you very much. Provided the service, and I also want to thank Kalahui for providing food, and encourage everyone to take food when they leave. And we'll see you all next month, April 18th. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Aimoku.